Good morning, I'm Julian Reed and welcome to Today in Parliament.
Good morning everyone, I'm Janaea Noel Ferguson. Welcome to another show. Thanks so much for joining us again today. Now Today in Parliament focuses on present legislation and a look back at past debates. But before we get into that, we want to take you to a live shot outside of the House of Assembly. That's where the Free National Movement, they look as if they're completed holding their protest. Now we know that this protest is in reference to V. Alfred Gray, that was the minister responsible for local government.
That's right. And of course, it looks like House members have already entered the House of Assembly. So it appears that it may not delay the proceedings this morning by that much, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yes, we still have a lot of gatherings by journalists and I guess other persons interested in today's protest.
Yeah, so it looks like some school students getting ready to go in there. So it must be a very interesting experience for them to see what's happening and how democracy actually takes place in the country.
That it is, Julian. But Julian, we're going to get back to the show. Today, parliamentarians are expected to continue debate on two bills. That's the Juries Amendment Bill 2015 and the Parliamentary Elections Amendment Bill 2015.
You're absolutely right, Janaea. But before we get back into the work, I must tell you how wonderful you look in this blue today.
Thank you so much. Really likewise. I think you looked in my closet this morning or took a peek through my window to see what I was wearing. But we are both on the blue team as ZNS prepares to celebrate the anniversary of ZNS Radio.
80 years of ZNS Radio. You'll hear more about that in weeks and months to come.
Exactly.
But parliamentarians did not get much time to debate the bills that were expected the last time when they met.
That's right.
And as a result of the Speaker having to suspend the House twice. Now, we'll refresh your memory on that. And actually, it has a lot to do with, not a lot, all to do with V. Alfred Gray, the member of Parliament from ICAL.
Yes, much of the proceedings during the last House sparked much debate during the morning and evening sessions. But parliamentarians were quite busy during the time that they took this absence. I think the last time the House resumed was late last month. So it's been quite some time. Julian, can you tell us a little bit about what they've been doing?
Well, March 25th was the last time that they actually met. And of course, since then, there have been two major international events. The CARICOM U.S. Summit, which was held in Jamaica.
Right.
And right after that, the Summit of the Americas in Panama City. And of course, our Prime Minister played an integral role in both of those events and gave addresses that focused on illegal migration, crime, youth, and unemployment.
Yes, quite some major issues focused by the Prime Minister. And we also heard that, well, we didn't hear, but we knew that U.S. President Barack Obama was in Jamaica for the U.S. CARICOM Summit. But let's get back to the two bills, Julian. The Juries Amendment Bill, which seeks to amend Sections 7, 8, 10, and 14 of Chapter 59 of the present bill. Now, this will empower the Parliamentary Commissioner to gather, in addition to the names of the voters, additional contact and identification information.
Absolutely. The bill allows selecting a jury panel by the use of a computerized system, which enhances efficiency and the integrity of the jury selection process. It will also ensure the random selection of jurors.
Yes, that's very important, Julian. Now, these bills are expected to modernize the process for jury selection, and we see where the two amendments work hand in hand with each other. Now, the amendment to the Parliamentary Elections Act provides for the collection and sharing by the Parliamentary Commissioner of the voter contact and other information maintained outside of the official register of voters. Now, our Keishla Adderley has an overview of those two bills.
The Parliamentary Registration Bill provides for the collection and sharing of information by the Parliamentary Commissioner. According to the proposal, the Parliamentary Commissioner shall, for the purpose of the administration of the Juries Amendment Bill, collect and maintain information of persons whose names are entered into the registration of voters. The bill empowers the Parliamentary Commissioner to collect, maintain, and share additional information with the Registrar of the Supreme Court. It also provides the manner and requirements of sharing additional voter information and the uses to which it may be put. The bill is being debated in tandem with the Juries Amendment Bill. According to that bill, for the purposes of determining persons liable for jury service, the Parliamentary Commissioner shall be mandated to forward to the Registrar a list of contacts for all persons who appear on the list of electors. According to the objects and reasons, the bill enables the Parliamentary Commissioner to utilize computerized means to impanel a jury, as opposed to the ball, card, box, or receptacle system. The practice, according to the bill, brings a more modern system to jury selection.
But now, again, we go back to the House of Assembly. I'm outside there, and you see some Free National Movement supporters. It looks like it's still a bit of a jam there trying to get into the House of Assembly.
Yeah, we also see several police officers. There looks to be a number of senior police officers as well, I guess, guarding the premises and ensuring that there is law and order during this protest. But we see here some Free National Movement members of Parliament. That's the MP for St. Anne's, Hubert Chipman, walking over.
Yeah, but anyway, let's take it back to the bills that were tabled by State Minister for Legal Affairs, Damien Gomez, who represents the Central and South Eleuthera constituency. He explains how the proposed juries amendment bill will work in the future when selecting jurors.
The bills which are being debated today will have the effect of providing improved efficiencies to our jury selection process. This government has been committed to the administration of justice, and we are always looking to fine-tune the legislation which has the effect of improving efficiencies in our court system and ensuring that we are able to provide our courts with the tools necessary to ensure swift, accurate verdicts, and by extension, the promotion of swift justice. Argument. However, Mr. Speaker, the jury is more than just a group of people who will render a guilty or not guilty verdict. Juries are, in essence, arbiters of fact in criminal proceedings. They must be prepared to observe and determine the truth of what evidence is laid before them. And they must operate in an objective manner in reaching their determination. They must consider the evidence presented before them. They must consider the facts in the context of the legal arguments presented before them. They must find the correct path of truth and walk swiftly along it. Mr. Speaker, the Constitution of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas provides for due process at Article 22G, where it states, every person who is charged with a criminal offense shall, when charged on information in the Supreme Court, have the right to trial by jury. In our Commonwealth, Mr. Speaker, the right to trial by jury is a constitutional right. It is an entitlement, and it is viewed as a barometer of the strength and integrity of our constitutional democracy. This constitutional right is a derivative of natural justice rights. It is a part of the entitlement to the right to a fair trial. Mr. Speaker, it is part of our common law tradition of fairness and proportionality in the adjudication of criminal matters. We do believe that it is critical to the efficiency of our swift justice initiative that we improve the jury selection process in our country. We've often heard the phrase, a jury of one's peers. Mr. Speaker, this serves to highlight the characteristic of equality, fairness of the jury selection process. It is meant to ensure that the legitimate expectation and constitutional entitlement to a fair trial and the due process of the law is empty of any complexity and empty of any appearance of unfairness or tampering, any appearance of interference by human error, all of which lead to inefficiencies in the trial process, to further delays in the administration of justice, and to the impotence of the justice system. Mr. Speaker, for the better part of these 3 years in government, we have been amending various criminal justice acts in an effort towards alleviating the backlog in criminal trials and improving efficiencies, that is, outcomes that are openly and transparently fair and just to the parties concerned. Swift justice has been very successful as a result. I do not intend to rehash the statistics on that. For those who are interested in my earlier contributions to the midterm debate, budget debate, the statistics generated by the Swift Justice Project had been made public. In the United States, the jury selection process integrates electronic databases to ensure that there is gender and racial equality in the selection process. And while that reasoning may not seem apparent in our context, as a small society, the implementation of an electronic database does provide us with a platform for a more fair and transparent selection process. Mr. Speaker, we must continue to innovate as the public's expectation of our criminal justice system continues to increase. As part of our initiative to improve the efficiencies of our courts, we have been seeking to implement modern, innovative systems and processes into our procedure-based legislation. Anything that would assist the court in expediting matters has been seized upon and implemented. The amendments, which are the subject matter of this debate, may seem to be small or minor, but, Mr. Speaker, they are nevertheless significant as a means by which the enhancement of the jury selection process will be achieved.
Well, that was Minister of State for Legal Affairs Damian Gomez. He explained that the bills will also allow the Parliamentary Commissioner to share the information on the register with the Registrar of the Supreme Court for jury selection.
That's right, Julian. Now, all of this really puts teeth behind the government's plan to expand the jury pool. Being summoned to serve as a juror is probably one of the most important callings of a citizen in this country. In his contribution, MP for Fox Hill Fred Mitchell talked about the importance of serving as a juror.
But the fact is, Mr. Speaker, that many people are, in the old days, in the old system, were perennially on jury duty. Every time you went down to the court, they were on jury duty, and they're specialists in jury. And if the police needed you to go on a coroner's jury, they always had a crew on their list. So, because the way the law used to be, or is still constituted, is that if there's a shortage of jurors, you can go out on Bay Street and press some people and say, look, I need some jurors up here to be on the coroner's court. And they sit and hear the case. So that's how it was in the old days. And then I had this experience, Mr. Speaker. I was in the court, and looks like the members getting carried away in something else again, right? But there I am in the court, and so the jury is hearing the case, and then the jury comes back with a not guilty verdict. And after the not guilty verdict comes in, and the judge has dismissed the defendant and all the rest of it, one of the members of the jury walks up to a person and says, now, after finding him not guilty, says, now, you don't do that again, you hear? So, the fact, though, Mr. Speaker, is that's how it used to be in the old days. Today, people take jury duty very seriously. It is, as the member said, when you sit on a jury, you're taking part in a very serious civic responsibility. And what is the responsibility of a citizen, Mr. Speaker? I would list them as this. First, to protect and defend the Bahamas. Secondly, to ensure the fiscal stability of the state. Thirdly, to participate in the civic life of the country. One of those duties as a citizen in participating in the civic life of the country is to register to vote and to participate in elections and referenda, to choose the government, and to make decisions with regard to the Constitution. Secondly, I would say to be involved in service on the jury. And how you get to serve on a jury is you have to register to vote, because the jury list is chosen from those who register to vote. And I've had people, when I've been campaigning door to door, who have said to me, I'm not going to register to vote because I don't want to serve on the jury. And many times people would come to me, even as a representative for the area, and say, I've been summoned to jury duty. Can you see if you can get me off jury duty? And my view is that you should always go and try to serve on the jury, because that's one of the great civic responsibilities of being a citizen of the Bahamas. Mm-hmm. And to be on a jury, that means you have to be Bahamian. So it's an integral part of being Bahamian, serving on a jury. I would also say that the Constitution, as you heard from the move of the motion, talked about Article 22G, in which the mover points out that the right to trial by jury is enshrined in the Constitution. I believe this actually required a challenge in the courts. And there is a famous ruling by Madam Justice Jones Sawyer, which reaffirmed the position that a trial on information, that is, if you are being tried for what is known as an indictable offense that goes before the Supreme Court, must be before a jury.
That was Fox Hill MP Fred Mitchell giving us a little bit of history on jury selection and how these amendments are expected to improve the system, Janae.
Yes, Julian, and while the opposition has yet to contribute to the bill in the House of Assembly, we did get some feedback from MP for East Grand Bahama, Peter Turnquest, on the bill. Now, he expressed the need for certain measures to be established before the implementation of this bill. Here's what he had to say.
Yes, we don't have any difficulty with this. I mean, I think there are some safeguards that need to be put in place to ensure that the data that is collected by the Parliamentary Commissioner is actually restricted to the use of the Parliamentary Department and the juries, the Supreme Court, with respect to jury selection, because I believe that they're collecting a little bit more data from us. So we want to make sure that that data is protected, that is not used for political or other purposes. And so that would be my only real concern with respect to that. But I think that we have to go further than that, and I believe that we need to start seriously discussing freedom of information. We need to seriously discuss campaign finance reform, and we need to seriously discuss an independent boundaries commission. I think those things are much more important, or as important, as the bill that is before us today.
Now, early in this broadcast, we told you that the House Speaker suspended the House during this debate twice. The first occasion was brought on by members of the opposition who repeatedly beat on their desks as Michael MPV Alfred Gray attempted to table documents.
That's right, Julian. And we should also note that the opposition had called for Gray's resignation. This after reports surfaced that he allegedly interfered with a court matter. Now let's take a look of how all of that played out during the last session of the House.
Chair recognized the honourable member for Michael. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House honorable members. Members, in this house, when members use their hands on the desk, is usually an affirmation or some celebration. Obviously, you've been disruptive members. That is disrespectful and dishonest to this house, and so we would order you to desist and cease from that behavior. Member for Michael, you may continue. Members, honorable members. Obviously, there's something afoot here that is a bit contrary to the chair will advise for the second time all members from the opposition bench to cease and desist from disrupting this house. The chair cannot hear, and the chair wants to hear the member as he communicates. Member for Michael. Member, let us suspend the House for 15 minutes.
Now, following that suspension, Prime Minister Perry Christie revealed to the House that the matter involving Minister Gray had been turned over to the police for investigation.
Now, he also revealed, Julian, that Mr. Gray requested to be relieved of his local government portfolio until the investigation is complete. This decision was supported by State Minister of Legal Affairs, Damian Gomez. We also have a clip of that.
In reference to the allegations recently made against Minister Alfred Gray, the member for Michael, I am advised that the Honorable Attorney General has referred the matter to the Royal Bahamas Police Force for a thorough investigation. As a result of this development, Minister Gray has invited me to relieve him of his ministerial responsibility for local government pending the outcome of the police investigation. In all the circumstances, I consider that this is the correct thing to do. Accordingly, I have advised Her Excellency the Governor General, pursuant to Article 77 of the Constitution, to transfer ministerial responsibility for local government from Minister Gray to Minister Hope Strawn, the member for Seabreeze, by way of addition to her current portfolio responsibility as Minister of Financial Services. This change will take place with immediate effect. The member for Michael is to be commended, Mr. Speaker, for his responsible approach to this matter. This is to be favorably contrasted, Mr. Speaker, and clearly this Parliament will be plunged into this kind of debate. But this is to be favorably contrasted with cases under the former administration involving allegations of serious and major impropriety on the part of various ministers in separate and unconnected matters. In none of these cases did any of these F&M ministers stand down from all or any part of their ministerial positions pending the outcome of any investigations that may have taken place. This is, Mr. Speaker, this is communication.
Member for East Grand Bahama. Pause.
Speaker,
member for Right Honourable Member.
The Prime Minister is on his feet,
very well,
making a serious communication that has consequences to people's lives. Mr. Speaker, to people's lives. This is a serious matter. They're taken at the highest level, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I also want to put into the record the letter written to me dated the 25th of March, 2015, addressed to the Right Honorable Perry G. Christie, MP, Prime Minister of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. My dear Prime Minister, in view of the recent allegations made against me in the press, which allegations are completely false, I hereby invite you to cause an immediate, impartial, and independent investigation to take place regarding these allegations. Further, in order to uphold the integrity of the investigative process, I hereby invite you to kindly consider causing the portfolio of the Department of Local Government to be transferred from my ministry. I am absolutely confident that at the end of the expected investigation, I will be completely vindicated. Mr. Speaker, I now provide you with these communications.
The matter described by the Prime Minister had in fact been referred to the Royal Bahamas Police Force by the Honorable Attorney General, in whose ministry I serve. This is a serious matter, and while the police investigation continues, we would expect that all right-thinking Bahamians would treat this matter as a serious matter and desist from making public commentary that might inflame or tarnish the investigative process. That is how civilized countries operate.
Well, that was Prime Minister Perry Christie, and then the MP for Central and South Eleuthera, Damien Gomez, who were talking about the serious nature of the allegations that have been made against the Alfred Gray and the government's plan to deal with that situation.
Certainly, Julian, but the drama in the House didn't end there. Now, during the afternoon session, that's when the House of Assembly resumed, members of the governing party caused quite a commotion and prevented opposition leader Dr. Hubert Minnis from making a communication on the issue involving the Michael MP. Yes, the group took the same type of action that the opposition took during the morning proceedings by refusing to allow Michael MP to table documents. Now let's take a look at how it all unfolded. This resulted in the second suspension of the House that day.
Will allow the member for Kalani at this time to make a intervention. The member, pause, member, you may come. Chair recognized member for Bain and Grandson.
What is the chair? Yeah?
The chair had made a ruling and indicated that the member on suspension motion would be given the opportunity to give an intervention, to give a contribution of national importance. The requirement is that the chair should receive a copy of it. The chair denied the member the opportunity because the chair didn't have a copy of it. The chair has received it now.
Yeah, but Mr. Speaker, we're not on a suspension motion now.
No, we're not on a suspension motion, but the chair in his discretion determined that this would be the appropriate time for the member, to make his intervention at this time.
The chair will do that without unanimous consent?
The chair, this decision does not require unanimous consent, honorable member.
What rule is it under which you do it?
Rule 48. And the chair will not pause while the member seeks to do research on the ruling. The chair would prefer the member to speak at this time. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Kalani.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not asking. Mr. Speaker, with the greatest respect, I'm asking the chair for an explanation. The chair is seeking to give me an explanation. You saying that I can't look in the rule book?
You're asking for a moment. You're standing at your feet with the rule book in your hand, and you expect the chair to just allow you to read it.
No, I expect the chair simply to go according to the rules of the House, Mr. Speaker. No more, no less.
Member, I would prefer both members to take your seats at this juncture. Member for Bain and Grandstand. 48 deals with end of matters of the day. It's an adjournment motion. The chair had indicated at suspension motions or otherwise that the chair will allow a member to make an intervention as long as the member follows the basic rules, which are to give the chair a copy of the communication. The chair has a copy of the communication. The chair has read it and is satisfied that it is within the rules of this House. And in order, due to in the interests of public, it is important that it be aired. And if the very well, Chair recognized the honourable member for Bain and Grand Sound.
I'm just thinking, you referred me to Rule 48, which speaks to matters on the motion for the adjournment. That's what this speaks of. We are not on a motion for suspension, nor are we on a motion for the adjournment.
Very well.
Speaker, there are ways in which this could be done, but I am seeking to know why is it that you are not following the rules.
Help the chair and tell me what other way it can be done, honourable member.
By seeking consent.
Very well. Very well. The chair is not going to nitpick at, in fact, the chair indicated earlier that this is likely to happen pending receiving a copy of the communication. The chair announced that.
Mr. Chair,
that was announced.
It did not say that it will allow a motion on the adjournment in the middle of a debate when there's neither a motion for suspension nor a motion for adjournment.
Very well. There is also, I'll recognize you, member. There's also Rule 49, which both bring some credence to an opportunity for a member of national import to make an intervention. Now, I have ordered the member to make the statement. This side, the government side, could respond to the statement. I'm not taking any more interventions from it. Members can do as they wish who have a difficulty with it. I've made a ruling. I have made a ruling, honorable members. Chair recognizes the member for Kalani.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to make a communication to this honorable House on a matter of grave public and national importance. Mr. Speaker, it was as a result of the efforts of the official opposition, that sordid and troubling abuse of power and unconstitutionality on the part of Mr. Alfred Gray, Member of Parliament for Maikal, was brought to the light of day. The record is clear. Mr. Gray, Member for Maikal, publicly admitted that he interfered with a local magistrate in that magistrate conduct of a judicial matter. The member for Maikal says he was merely offering what appears now to have been unsolicited legal advice. This member has been openly contradicted in this day's newspaper by the said magistrate, members who stated categorically that he had been ordered and pursuant
Yes, House suspends.
All right.
Now, when the House of Assembly resumed, Julian, member for Rumkey, Kid Island, and San Salvador, Deputy Prime Minister Philip Davis, he condemned the Killarney MP for his statements, stating that they were inappropriate. He charged that the Killarney member was convicting Gray for a matter still under investigation.
Yes, but the Member of Parliament for Maikal, V. Alfred Gray, who's been at the heart of the controversy, finally had his say on the issue. And as you will see in this next clip, that sparked a debate between Fox Hill MP Fred Mitchell and Central Grand Bahama MP Nico Grant.
Well, we don't have that clip, Julian. That's not available to us. We do apologize for those difficulties, but that whole event sparked the Speaker to suspend the House until today. And we'll take you to a live shot of the House of Assembly. Not much action.
Well, things seem to have calmed down outside there now, so the protests that were held by Free National Movement members seems to have come to an end, and we expect that that means that the proceedings in the House of Assembly will begin very soon.
Yes, it will. Well, Julian, because of all of that happened in the House, there was not much said, not much discussed, but we did have an opportunity to hear a number of contributions, including a contribution from the Deputy Prime Minister, who's responsible for BEC. Now, he gave an update on the situation. As you know, they're working through some things to find a partner for BEC, and he told us that whatever comes out of the decision made, the government hopes that this will take on the same business model as the airport development company.
We expect the reawakening of our entrepreneurial spirit as regular citizens become empowered to produce energy for themselves and others through grid-tie connections. This entrepreneurism is facilitated by the provision for the Residential Energy Self-Generation Program, which gives diverse benefit to consumers. This deliverable of the National Energy Policy was animated by the Electricity Amendment Act. Though the Bahamas' dawn for the renewable age lags behind global trends, we have been judicious in our approach to catch up with empowering our citizens to become independent power producers. With the Residential Energy Self-Generation Program, the opportunity exists to generate energy through alternative energy sources, tie into the current electrical grid, and to receive a credit for excess electricity fed into that grid. Mr. Speaker, this is a great time in our history because for renewable technologies, we have created new opportunities for jobs, including manufacturing project development, construction and wind turbine installation, operations and maintenance, transportation and logistics, financial and legal and consulting services. We look forward to entrepreneurs seizing opportunities to take on workers for solar installation manufacturing and sales. Everything comes in its due season, Mr. Speaker. Renewable technologies are not beyond the reach of average citizens. Government has eliminated tariffs on inverters for solar panels and LED appliances to ensure that more of our citizens would be able to afford these energy-saving devices. We are also witness to a time when the cost of renewable energy technologies around the world are declining steadily and are projected to drop even more. For example, in the United States, the average price of a solar panel has dropped almost 60% since 2011, and the cost of generating electricity from wind dropped more than 20% between 2010 and 2012, more than 80% since 1980. Globally, field experts are unified in the expectation that the cost of renewable energy will decline even further as markets mature and companies increasingly take advantage of the modalities. Mr. Speaker, having documented our energy policy, having passed the Electricity Amendment Act.
Well, as you can see on your screen, the House of Assembly is about to begin, but join us again at the 1 o'clock hour for live coverage. You can see Pastor Hugh Roach about to give the
good morning
opening prayer and scripture for this morning.
Had a good Easter.
House Speaker Dr. Kendall Major.
Fine season of the year, not only in the church's calendar, but in the whole world. And I feel renewed, rejuvenated. Every time you have Easter and resurrection, you ought to feel hopeful. So this morning I take the liberty to read one of the inspired writings about that great event. For I delivered unto you first of all that which I also received. St. Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 15. how that Christ died for our sins according to the Scriptures, and that he was buried, and that he rose again the third day according to the Scriptures, and that he was seen of Cephas, then of the 12. After that, he was seen of about 500 brethren at once, of whom the greater part remain unto this present, but some are fallen asleep when Paul wrote this. After that, he was seen of James, then of all the apostles, and last of all, seen of me also. This is the word of the Lord. I hope you had a chance during the hymn singing and during the scripture reading and during the preaching to get a new glimpse of the Lord. For the angel's message remains. He is risen. He's not here. And we thank God for that hope. After listening to all the performances of our young people over this wonderful season, you must think that they were operating under resurrection power, which is just wonderful. Their faith was at work, and we thank God for their successes. I shall resume at the next meeting a continuation of this resurrection theme, because I think it's so relevant to our times and to our season. I ask you then to share with me a moment of prayer as we bow together. Let us pray. Gracious God and our Heavenly Father, in reverence we stand humbly in this honorable house, in your presence and in the presence of each other, to give you our humble thanks for the way you have led us to this day, the midpoint of April 2015. We thank you, Lord, for what you have done for us as a people, as a nation, and throughout this Commonwealth. Many have paused to thank you that the resurrection did happen, that the Lord is risen indeed. With this new spirit and this gentle reminder that we serve a risen, living Lord, we ask that you will bless your people here and everywhere. Thank you for our speaker of this honorable house. We ask for him wisdom and strength to do what he does so well. And bless the government and people of this country and all those who are in authority. We thank you for the young people who march so wonderfully under the banner of our flag. We thank you, Lord, for their successes and for the encouragement they bring to the whole nation. We ask your blessing on us and teach us how to live in love, to live in harmony, to live in peace one with another. For we ask these things in the name of him who is the Prince of Peace, even Jesus, who taught us when we pray to say together, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Amen.
Good morning, honorable members. Today is Wednesday, the 15th day of April in the year of our Lord 2015. And I'd like to welcome you back to the continuation of a sitting of this honorable house. So delightful to see so many wonderful faces in the gallery this morning. But when we last met, we were initiating debate for two bills, a compendium of bills led by the Jury's Amendment Bill, but also includes the Parliamentary Elections Amendment Bill. I believe the member for Montague had reserved his place and was recognized as the next presenter. But before we continue, kindly indulge the chair for a brief intervention. As I mentioned earlier, so delightful to see so many wonderful faces in the gallery this morning. And the first group I'd like to recognize is the group from Trinity Methodist Church, led by their distinguished rector and pastor, Bill Higgs, and his lovely wife, who was also the former chaplain of this honorable house. We welcome you, sir, and your delegation. And I'm advised that you're here because you're celebrating 150 years. That's a long time. Anniversary celebration. And several members, many of you served as parliamentarians over the many years. Visiting with us, Reverend William Higgs as the pastor, Mrs. Lauren Higgs is their wife, the Honorable Neville Wisdom, a former member of Parliament and cabinet minister. Delightful to see you, and yes. And his lovely wife, Manita Wisdom. Good to see you. And also Reverend Charles Sweeting, the perennial member of the Malcolm Scholarship, past school master and principal of the Great Comets. Yes. And I can say that because my daughter is a comet now. And so nice to see you looking well and looking strong, and so delightful to have all of you join us today. I'm not going to let them get off so easy. Just want to brief you with a couple of things about Trinity Methodist. Celebrating the 150th anniversary of continuous worship, witness, and service, located at Trinity Place and Frederick Street in the heart of the city. Trinity is certainly proud to be, have contributed so much to our nation building. And we mentioned that Reverend Higgs is here and Honorable Neville, but there's a little more. Mr. Wisdom's grandparents, Enoch, Pedro, and Gladys Roberts, were members of Trinity. And from that family, there are several members of Parliament, including their son, Anthony Roberts, son-in-law, Oscar Johnson Sr., grandchildren, Italia Johnson, the former distinguished speaker, Gladys Johnson, and I shan't call his name, but certainly the honorable member for Carmichael. There's also Mr. Robert Delbines, whose father, Donald Delbines, was a member of this honorable house, Mrs. Cara Smith, whose father-in-law, Philip Smith, was a member of this honorable house. Queen's College also celebrating their 125th anniversary this year, started in 1890 at Trinity. And Reverend Charles Sweeting, as mentioned earlier, is a minister of Trinity and former principal of QC. And on occasion, I understand, filled in as chaplain of this honorable house. Trinity has also other members who served as senators, including Harold Sanders, Sir Leonard Knowles, who's president of the Senate, and the first Bahamas Chief Justice, and Sir George Roberts served as president. And the members are visiting today to assure the members of this honorable house that they have remembered us in prayer for those of us who serve our nation, and ask God continuous blessings on those of us who have given of ourselves to the service of others. We are so thankful that you are praying for us. We need your prayers. Honorable members, let us welcome the delegation from Trinity. Also have a surprise visitors today, the 2015 Carifta swim team. 29 goals. 17 silver, 8 bronze. They won by 101 points. Cecile Green is the team manager. Come on. Where's Cecile? Oh, there you are, hidden in the corner. Cecile Green, team manager. Mishak Roberts, team captain. And where's Mishak? There he is, okay. And Nishan Fernanda, Samuel Gibson, Virginia Stamp, or Kemp, I'm not sure. Stamp, thank you very much. Felix Newbold, Catherine Slater, Anger MacPhail, either the handwriting or my glasses. Tonya Johnson, Andreas Weish, Ian Pinder, Devante Carey, and Tristan Russell. What a delight to have you visit with us this morning. Come on, House of Assembly, let's welcome them. And congratulations on your victory. We continue to expect good of you, and with all this water we have in our archipelago, we should be winning all the time. Congratulations once again. Finally, we also have the Bahamas Softball Federation, also a winning team. The Bahamas champions of the English Caribbean Amateur Softball Federation, going undefeated, 8-0. You defeated Aruba for the championships. And we have Mr. Burkett Dossett, the president of the Bahamas Softball Federation, Mr. Godfrey Burnside, the manager, Mr. Percy Seymour, coach, Mr. Sherman Ferguson, MVP. Oh yeah, we got an MVP in the house. And we have Mr. Richard Bain, who is one of the players. Congratulations, gentlemen. The Bahamas indeed on a roll. Continue to keep up the good work, and certainly we will ask Trinity to keep you also in their prayers as we pray for our young people and our nation at large. The second matter I wanted to just deal with briefly is the chair had received an official letter from the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee requesting its assistance in facilitating public hearings for some of its inquiries regarding Bahamas agricultural and marine resources in Andros, called BAMSI. The chair responded privately to the request of the Public Accounts Committee seeking their assistance, and the chair, in its capacity, granted approval in principle, and the chair will certainly do its part to facilitate their wishes. Subsequently, a letter was forwarded to the office of the Right Honorable Member for Centerville as Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, whose office, under our present administrative structure, is responsible for managing the financial matters related to the Parliament. For your information. The third matter, before we begin, by private request, the member for Fox Hill wanted to make a brief intervention in the capacity as minister's statements, and the chair has received the communication and deemed it appropriate, and the chair will recognize the member for, I believe there are 3 communications, short communications, and the chair will recognize the member at this time. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Fox Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The first is the matter of the alleged surveillance and the taping of conversations of Bahamians by United States agencies in the Bahamas has been the subject of public interest for some time. The Bahamas government has made inquiries on this matter and received the following answer from the United States State Department by way of an oral communication on the 26th of January, and I'm quoting from my notes of the meeting. The U.S. will, going forward, use the lawful authority that was mutually agreed between the 2 countries to obtain surveillance information for drug interdiction and criminal activities. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, honorable member. Order that the communication be brought up.
There's 12 or 13. Mr. Speaker, I want to lay on the table the statements made by the Prime Minister in Kingston, Jamaica on the 9th of April at a summit with the President of the United States, Barack Obama, and at the Summit of the Americas in Panama City in Panama on the 11th of April. Both meetings were highly successful, and the missions, the aims, and objectives were achieved. The Bahamas has always supported the idea of a continuing conversation with the United States, which is our largest trading partner and with which we have so much that we share. We welcomed the meeting and were integrally involved in all aspects of its planning. Given the domestic interest in the site of the meeting being Kingston as opposed to Nassau, we received the following information from the United States with regard to the site of the meeting. The venue for the CARICOM U.S. Summit was chosen based on the rollout of a significant U.S. education portfolio initiative, and that the University of the West Indies Mona campus in Jamaica represented a multinational venue campus in order to launch such a program for the Americas. 2, additionally, the venue offered the most suitable and opportune use of the President's time on the way to the Summit of the Americas, which was being held in Panama. The logistics, travel time, and air travel, etc., to Panama was a contributing factor. During the meeting, the U.S. President was engaged with all prime ministers. The rapport between our own Prime Minister and the President was excellent, building on their first meeting in the fall of last year. The choice of the venue had nothing at all to do with any domestic issues in the Bahamas, and any such allegation is patently false. In June of this year, there is to be a summit on citizen security to be hosted by the Bahamas in Nassau. Leaders from around the region and the United States are expected to gather in Nassau for that meeting. There were several commitments made by the U.S. President at the summit in Jamaica with regard to national security, financial services, competition, and energy. The U.S. President indicated that his administration will move quickly on these matters. It remains only for me to say that the role of the Prime Minister in ensuring that these meetings were a success is unchallenged. The meetings were an unqualified success, and I would like to thank all the team that supported the meetings at CARICOM and in our own Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Jamaica, and the Office of Prime Minister in Jamaica for ensuring its success. In Panama, the Prime Minister was able to put the country's definitive position on immigration once again, saying to the world and the hemisphere that we will not apologize for the actions which we have taken on immigration, and he called on border states to do their part to stop their citizens from breaching our borders. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Order that the communication be brought up.
I wonder, Mr. Speaker, if I can just give an undertaking with regard to the 2 statements the Prime Minister made to do that.
Very well.
Finally, Mr. Speaker,
Member for Foxhill, you recognise.
I wondered if you wanted to complete laying it on the table and do the.
Very well. Order that the 2 communications do lie on the table. Chair recognizes Member for Foxhill.
Thirdly, Mr. Speaker, I wish to say to the House the following. On the 9th of April, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs advised the public that the Bahamas Consul General to Atlanta, Randy Roll, has returned to Nassau for consultations with his principals at the headquarters, and those consultations continue. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Order that the communication be brought up. Thank you. In order that the communication do lie on the table. Thank you, Honourable Member. Also, out of private request by ministers, the member for Carmichael, in his capacity as Minister responsible for Youth, Sports and Culture, would like to now make a brief intervention to congratulate officially the teams, the winning teams. The Chair will recognize the Honourable Member at this time. The Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Carmichael. Minister's statements.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd also wish to recognize the visitors in the gallery on the front row. I am also a QC Comet. I'm a full disclosure minister. And I want to congratulate them for the first time, I think, in Bahamian history, holding what we call the 3 A's. They have the athletics title, they hold the title for academics, the school with the best academics this year, and also hold the National Arts Festival title. It's the first school to hold those 3 titles that I know of. I have to also recognize I'm a part of that family. It's a very esteemed family under the leadership of Enoch Pedro Roberts I. But in your statements, you missed out the person who got it started in public service was actually Captain Sherman Archer. Captain Sherman Archer was the first one that ventured into public life from that particular line of David of Bartholomew of Green Turtle Key. So I don't want to leave him out. We also have to recognize on this very special day the former Minister of Youth, Sports and Culture, who also was the head coach of the teams that won, the Carifta Bahamas teams that have won, I think, 3 Carifta titles, two Carifta titles. We want to congratulate him. He should feel good that they're trying to get this thing, back on the road. And hopefully I've gleaned some things from watching him. But he's also my first cousin and a former member of Parliament and the former Minister of Youth, Sports and Culture, Honorable Neville Wisdom, and his wife, Manita. Of course, the Venerable Reverend Bill Higgs and his wonderful wife. But I also want to pay special tribute to someone who, when I was a little boy, I was very bad. And I used to get sent to the office, man. And I've never seen such a big hand in my life. So a man who boxed me up a couple of times and got me on the straight and narrow, the Reverend Charles Sweeting, please. Mr. Speaker, we're here today to celebrate and congratulate Team Bahamas. Team Bahamas is doing very well. And as we maintain in our ministry that youth development through sports and culture is an integral part of the developmental platform of this country, we take every opportunity to focus on their achievements and every opportunity to tell them how much we are proud of them, that we continue to pray for you, and that God is going to continue to bless you. And the proof of it is in your continued success as you aspire to greatness that you have seen before, and we know that you will do it again and again. So today, sir, we actually welcome and recognize parts of Team Bahamas here today who are the all-stars of Carifta swim, Carifta track and field. We have softball champions. We also have our beach soccer athletes. And we want to just give all of them honorable mention. And on behalf of a grateful nation, sir, I extend congratulations to our star athletes for a fantastic job, well done. First of all, Carifta swimming. The Bahamas Swim Federation has fiercely defended its championships and delivered its 2nd straight victory at the 30th Carifta Swim Championships 2015, which was held in Barbados. The Minister of Education, a fantastic swimmer himself in his old days, was the head of delegation and brought the gold home. Team Bahamas combined a medal count consisting of 21 gold, 15 silver, 5 bronze, for a total of 41 medals. Sorry, 29. Barbados and Trinidad and Tobago followed in 2nd and 3rd place with 37 and then 31 medals, respectively. Among the highlights of the 2015 Carifta Swim Championships was the first national swim record set for the Bahamas, most notably by Joanna Evans in the 200, the 400, and 800-meter freestyle. Also of notable mention, sir, is Mr. Isaac Bastian, who also won 3 gold medals in the 100, the 200, and 400-meter breaststroke. Mr. Speaker, In the 200 meter, 400 meter, and 800 meter freestyle, Joanna Evans set new Carifta records of 2 minutes and 3 seconds, 4 minutes and 12 seconds, 8 minutes and 39 seconds, respectively. Joanna Evans also set a record of 4 minutes 59 in the 400 meter individual medley. This young lady, sir, we call her 999. She hails from Grand Bahama. No, she couldn't make it. She's in school. She's college bound. No, I just said the Minister of Education. You don't listen, man. I know you didn't go to QC. It's all right. We forgive you for that. Mr. Speaker, Joanna Evans has really distinguished herself. And this is a team, but we do have to give her honorable mention. Joanna has received 9 A's at GCE level. 9 A's. She's in Grand Bahama. She's not here today. I don't think she's there. She's in Grand Bahama. 9 A's at GCEs. She has received 9 gold medals in her last output at Carifta. 9 gold medals at Carifta. And last year, Joanna posted on her SATs a score of almost 1900. 999. Mr. Speaker, a massive float parade is planned for our Carifta Star athletes on tomorrow, that is Thursday, the 16th of April, 2015, leaving the Thomas A. Robinson Stadium at 4 p.m. 4 p.m., people, Thomas A. Robinson National Stadium. Be there. Mr. Speaker, Carifta Track and Field. Last year, performances were not up to par, but it didn't bother us. Just like, the reason I herald QC is that I remember when we used to come last in all them categories. And so when we came first this year, people wonder why I was jumping up and down. But we came from last to first. And that is the story of what young people can do if given the opportunity. And the B3As have risen to the challenge. The challenge of restoring our good name in the region as a competitive force, and returned home this year, sir, with a second place finish behind Jamaica with 31 medals, 8 gold, 13 silver, and 10 bronze. On that occasion, the Honorable Shane Gibson, Minister of National Housing, National Insurance and Housing, was there to cheer on that crowd, as I was here and all around the Family Islands, getting our Family Island sporting facilities ready for next summer. Mr. Speaker, while we celebrate the accomplishments of this entire team, I would be remiss if I did not recognize 2 of the Bahamas' outstanding athletes of the Games. These individuals are Charisma Taylor and Shaquana Dorset. The under-18 division, Charisma won 2 gold medals in long jump and triple jump. And Shaquana competed the under-20 girls division, where she won 2 gold medals in the 400 and the 800 meters race. I also would like to take this opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to recognize the field athletes, because very often they don't get the recognition they deserve. The further development of both these sports is integral to our ability to win Carifta again. Not only have our young athletes excelled in physical sports, they have also excelled in the mind sports. This year, Carifta, Bahamas captured the bronze medal at Carifta Chess. The tournament featured 109 top juniors from 9 island territories, and the Bahamas did extremely well. Mr. Speaker, the Jamaican Athletics Administrative Association has noticed what we are doing in the Bahamas. They have recently confirmed that the world's fastest man, Usain Bolt, will compete at the IAAF VTC World Relays Bahamas 2015 here in 21 days. The local organizing committee, the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Culture, and on behalf of the government of the Bahamas is extremely pleased that Usain is participating in the 2nd edition of the IAAF World Relays. These relays are scheduled to be held at the Thomas Augustus Robinson National Stadium from May 2nd to May 3rd, 2015, and will see more than 1,000 athletes and officials from around the world competing with 5 relay disciplines: the 4x100 meters, the 4x200 meters, the 4x400 meters, the 4x800 meters, and a distant medley for men and women. Mr. Speaker, we also wish to note that this event, the World Relays, is the biggest sporting event to be held in the Bahamas ever. It will serve as a qualifier for the Olympics in 2016. The impact of this event and the participation of Usain Bolt will further solidify the Bahamas as a global venue for internationally renowned sporting events, and we say that sports in paradise is only found here. Mr. Speaker, the 30th Ordinary and Extraordinary Meeting of CONCACAF, the Congress, is being held this week in the Bahamas from the 14th to the 17th of April. The Confederation of North America, Central America, and Caribbean Associations of Football is the continental governing body for the Association of Football in North America and the Caribbean. The CONCACAF Beach Soccer Championships took place in the Bahamas last year. This was the first time that the IAAF Beach Soccer qualifiers had been held in the Caribbean. All the matches took place at the new Malcolm Park Beach Soccer facility, and it was indeed a fantastic event. Mr. Speaker, to announce this place that plans are currently underway for the hosting of the 2017 IAAF World Cup of Beach Soccer to be held in Nassau, the Bahamas. The Bahamas has been selected as the host country of the FIFA Beach World Cup for 2017 for the obvious reasons. We have the best beaches in the world. And the thrilling overtime victory of Bahamas over Jamaica, the Rake and Scrape Boys, as they've affectionately become known, have secured the Bahamas a place in the CONCACAF tournament. Mr. Speaker, softball. The Bahamas Softball Federation hosted the English Caribbean Confederation of Softball Tournaments March 25th through 29th. The tournament comprised 6 participating teams, which included Aruba, Belize, British Virgin Islands, Cayman Islands, and Turks and Caicos, and of course the Bahamas. The Bahamas team finished with a perfect record of 8-0, taking the championships. We wish to congratulate the team members, all the All-Stars, Mr. Burkett, who is here today, Mr. Burkett Dorset, and also say that in the 2020 Olympics, baseball and softball will now be included, and so these federations begin their march towards having teams in those events. Mr. Speaker, we wish to thank you very much for the time that you've granted us. We want to let people know that young people in the Bahamas are doing fantastic things. They're out there doing their best on the behalf of the country, and the country is doing their best on behalf of them. On behalf of these young people and their teams, I wish to present 2 tokens of their appreciation, one to the Deputy Prime Minister, DPM. This is from the Carifta teams. So one of course from St. Kitts and one from Barbados, is the Prime Minister. This is from the Carifta teams, one from St. Kitts and one from Barbados. And also for the Leader of the Opposition, just so you know, sports is an equal opportunity enterprise. I have your tokens here, also for yourself. I'll have them passed over, but we also have something for you too. We ask people to note that the World Relays is coming. Team Bahamas will be on the world stage. Junkanoo Carnival is coming. Team Bahamas will be on the world stage. We got to put our best foot forward. I thank you. God bless you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Order that the communication be brought up. Member for Fox Hill.
In addition to lay those 2 statements, I had promised the Prime Minister's statement in Panama and
Very well.
Kingston.
Order that the communication by the member for Carmichael do lie on the table. Order that the communications be brought up. In order that the communications do lie on the table by the member for Fox Hill. Member for Central Grand Bahama.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If I may, I would wish to speak on behalf of my colleagues as it relates to, firstly, joining you in saluting the members of the Meditas delegation. We should also like to join the Minister in congratulating the Carifta swim team on an outstanding performance. Lastly, we want to commend and congratulate members of the Bahamas national softball team. The Speaker, softball is near and dear to me. The Bahamas Softball Federation was formed in 1972. I became an officer in 1975 and had the privilege of designing the Federation's official crest. I was also honored to serve as president for 3 consecutive terms and spent some 25 years as an administrator. And so, Mr. Speaker, I'm able to appreciate the work that President Burkett Dossett has done, the hard work that the manager, Gully Burnside, and his coaches would have done for the victory they achieved a few weeks ago. It would appear that men softball is again on the way to world prominence. At one time ago, our men and ladies were ranked within the first 10, as high as number 3 in the world, and their performance several weeks ago confirms that they are on the way back. And so I want to commend and congratulate President Burkett Dossett and Mr. Gully Burnside, the team manager. Finally, Mr. Speaker, we would wish Joanne Evans to know how proud we are of her. I understand that this is her last year for Rifter, and she will be off to the University of Texas. We congratulate her. We want her to know that we are proud of her, and we wish her God's speed in her future endeavors. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Member for Cat Island, Rum San Salvador, you so recognized.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this brief intervention to lend the voice on this side of the government to those that have preceded me in respect to the presence of those here today. I first would wish to extend congratulations and to acknowledge the presence of those here from Trinity Methodist. 150 years, Mr. Speaker, is no mean feat. It's not an easy period to be continuously in a particular kind of service for 150 years. I think since we are talking about the Methodist Church and its speciality, and forgive me if I try to remember some things. For example, I think it was Methuselah, who lived 969 years. Methuselah, 969 years. And I think it is said that was the person, was the longest living person recorded in the Bible. But we don't know that much about him. All we know is that he lived a long life, and he died. Yes. That was 969 years. Again, not a mean feat. But we also know of another person that is recorded in the Bible, and he lived, I think, 33 and a half years, or 33 years. I'll be corrected if I were not accurate in the numbers, but I think it was 33 years. But his life was such that he impacted the world and humanity for more than 2,000 years. And we know that all that we do, that all what we are, that have shaped us, comes from his teachings. And I think what is the lesson of that, Mr. Speaker? And that is that it's not basically how long one may have existed, but what one did during their existence. And I take my hat off for the existence of the Trinity Methodist Church, because they have really marked the history of this country. And it's not just when we say it marked the history of this country. It also, from longevity, much could be learned, because things evolve. What may have been practiced in the past and not embraced then, we learn from those things. We learn how to and how not to. And the Trinity's existence taught us how not to do some things and how to do some things. And today, the Trinity today, when marked with yesterday, tells us where our country has come. And we should continue to build on those tenets for which the Trinity Methodist has exhibited in this country. Madam Speaker, and again, as I said, take my hat off to Pastor William Higgs and his wife, the Honorable Neville Wisdom and his wife, all of whom are known to me, and of course, the indomitable Reverend Sweeting, whose existence and towering presence in the Methodist movement in the country is no doubt unmatched and unknown. Methuselah. I'm being advised the name is Methuselah. And I stand corrected by those who would know better. That is the Reverend Melanie Griffin. And so we salute you, sir. We salute you, gentlemen, for crowning the existence of the Trinity Methodist Church by attending and marking it by coming to this, what they call it, this side of the vineyard in Parliament. Mr. Speaker, in respect to those we pay tribute for their accomplishments, the Swimming Federation and the Softball Federation, each of which I've had some connection with and involvement with. In softball as a player, softball as a player. Bad boy. No, they'll tell you. Those who know will know that I did have a little. I did mark my my presence in softball was noted as a participant, and of course in swimming. Not as a participant, but as an administrator. I was involved in the foundational evolution of swimming, and I'm happy to see where we are today. And I take my hat off to those who have now making us proud in swimming. We always thought that the Bahamas should be on the top of swimming because of all the water that surrounds us. But even though the swimming is different in the sea than in the pool, we have this idea, this thought that we should be exemplars in the swimming pool. I take my hat off to the swimmers of Carifta, who continues to make us proud and will continue to excel, particularly those who have excelled individually. We thank you. Of course, I happen to have attended the game between the Bahamas and Aruba, and I am happy to see, and I join with the member from Central Abaco, Central Grand Bahama, to note that we are moving in the right direction in softball once again. My hat's off to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member, and thank all Honourable Members for your contributions. Finally, Honourable Members, as we commenced in earnest the debate this morning, and very well, the Chair recognized the Right Honourable Member for Centerville.
I was hoping the member for that there was a Methodist in the House, but I think as someone who's been christened in Wesley Methodist Church by the Reverend William Makepeace, it is appropriate for me to join colleagues in being able to acknowledge the defining contribution of the Methodist Church to the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, and in particular, Trinity Methodist Church, which historically carries that history magnificently. John Wesley, who is quoted as having written words that have been passed down through the centuries. And I'm going to try to think of it, but the meaning of those words are that you are admonished to do all that you can for as many people as you can, in every place that you can, at all times that you can. But it was a clearly an open-ended commitment to Christian charity. And he is famous for it. It is in the historic church in Harbor Island. It's inscribed there, and I always try to stimulate my memory when I go in there, so it's got something that you can quote. But you have my grandfather, W. Allen, used to take my mother, and she was the youngest one of her brothers and sisters, and put them on the back of a truck and drive from Tarpon Bay to preach at the church in Hatchet Bay, or Alice Town. He was one of those pioneers, lay ministers, who moved up and down Eleuthera in his time as a tomato farmer, etc., but he is the father or grandfather of Ed Allen, the evangelist, who really, Al McCartney, the brethren, he has, and of course, his son-in-law is Rex Major. So there's an illustrious assembly of religious personalities. And finally, Mr. Speaker, that the Methodist Church has also contributed to education in the country and continues to do so. So as we mark 150 years of history, I think it's important again for the country to note that the contribution has been an enduring one, that it has gone beyond the spirituality vested in their parishioners, that has gone into shaping values and shaping characters and molding Bahamian citizens. And so on this occasion, really, I would want to join as the Prime Minister of the country, my colleagues, in being able to salute the Church Trinity, and finally to say to my former colleague who is sitting in the front seat, really as an appendage to his wife. It's not him. He's sitting here because his wife is the personality who is an officer and the ranking member, so he's only sitting here to hold her hands. But it is good to see you back in Parliament, and you're sitting between, on the right, the Reverend Higgs, your left, and on the right, the Reverend Charles Sweeting. Bill Higgs and Charles Sweeting are iconic figures in the Methodist Church, again, who in their own right are major contributors to the church. And it is good to see the two of you, and particularly you, Reverend Sweeting, that you are still able to take these stairs and walk up here, having yourself stood at the bar of this house as a pastor, the leader in the House of Assembly. And so for me, I thought I should join them in recognizing each of you also for the personal contributions you are making, and of course to Mrs. Higgs, who is here as well, and Mrs. Wisdom. Finally, sir, the Member of Parliament for Cat Island, Rumkins, and Salvador spoke with some nostalgia about having some connection with being an athlete. There are some of us who can speak to having represented the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. I'm one of them. And so I have shared the glory of being on the stage and listening to the stadium say, Peri Christi de la Bahama numero 5, and so forth and so on. So I want to, in that spirit where I claim to have been an athlete, to salute the athletes who are here present, to say to you that if I had your opportunity at your age to be as good as you are and to have the kind of talent that you have, I would have been something very, very special in the world. You are just, I have the greatest admiration for those of you who are so young, but so talented and so gifted. And I want to encourage you, because wherever you go, you have been holding up your country. And when you look at your flag, right, that's what you're doing. The reputation of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. When you get into the pool and you're swimming for the flag, you're swimming for the people, and you're doing so magnificently. So again, I join all of my colleagues in congratulating you and congratulating the coaches and the parents without whom you would not be able to do these things, and just say to you, a job well done, and please continue for the glorification of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas to do good works.
Thank you, Right Honorable Member. Finally, as we commence in earnest the debate, I would like to remind all honorable members that in this debate the rule of relevance will apply. The chair will therefore appreciate members' compliance and respect for the judgment of the chair. With that, we shall begin. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read a second time and committed. A bill for an act to amend the Juries Act to provide an alternate means of jury selection by electronic process. As many? The chair recognizes the honorable member for Kalani.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, unlike yourself and the member for Carmichael, I am a member of the Big Red Machine. But what I wanted, Mr. Speaker, when we left this chambers the last time, the member for Montague had the floor. I want to inform you that the member of Montague is not well today, and we wish him a speedy recovery. And I'm requesting, with your permission, Mr. Speaker, for the member for Central Grand Bahama to be our first speaker and the leader speaker today for the opposition.
Very well, so granted. The chair will recognize the member this time if he's so prepared. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Central Grand Bahama.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it's been an interesting morning. But I rise on behalf of the wonderful people of Central Grand Bahama to contribute briefly to the Parliamentary Election Amendment Bill 2015 and the Juries Amendment Bill 2015. Mr. Speaker, here we are today on the 15th day of April to debate an amendment to the Juries Amendment Bill. The Juries Amendment Bill was debated and passed in this place in July 2014, 8 short months ago. So yet, less than a year ago, and we're here again addressing a Juries Amendment Bill. It leaves one to wonder, sir, who is coordinating this government's legislative agenda, particularly as it relates to swift justice. Some time ago, the PLP used the slogan, shock and awe, in one of their political ads. The Bahamian populace certainly is in a state of shock and awe of this current administration, and shock and awe of the total disregard for the many campaign promises that were made. They said they were ready on day one, and yet few promises have been fulfilled. This administration has shown nothing but disdain to the Bahamian people. Do nothing and the people will forget. It is their mantra. Deflect and dodge is the order of the day in so many matters that need to be addressed in this country. They have turned governing this country into a defensive game. They cast blame, they defend and deflect, but they have yet to score. Mr. Speaker, as I stand here this morning, I'm reminded of an occasion some years ago when I was driving with my son on West Sunrise Highway headed east. We were approaching the old Bahamas Princess Resort. And I said to him, that is the Royal Oasis. That is supposed to cause some positive things to happen for Grand Bahama. And he said to me, Daddy, that is not an oasis. It is a mirage. Mr. Speaker, regrettably, swift justice in this country has become just that, a mirage. Mr. Speaker, where is the swift justice for a civil servant who has been accused of wrongdoing on his job. He is suspended, sent home, and placed on half pay for however long it takes the police to investigate. A week, a month, sometimes years. On the other hand, Mr. Speaker, we have a cabinet minister who has been accused or is alleged to have interfered with the judicial system of this country. He continues to sit as a cabinet minister while the police investigates him. And Mr. Speaker, what is so egregious about what is happening is that this cabinet minister sits at the cabinet table with the Attorney General, who is supposed to decide whether charges are laid as a result of the police investigation. Mr. Speaker, in a modern Bahamas, this should not be happening. Mr. Speaker, according to this government during their campaign, under the Swift Justice Initiative, all stakeholders in the criminal justice system will work together and criminals will get the message that they would be swiftly caught, prosecuted, and punished. And I quote, "Swift prosecutions and executing swift justice would send the right message to criminals that law-abiding Bahamians have had enough and their shenanigans will not be tolerated." The Attorney General is quoted as saying, "Integrated justice facilities, collaboration between the institutions and agencies within the justice systems, including probation, the police, the courts, the prison, and of course the Attorney General's office." Indeed, we have decided to what extent this concept to include family victims. Representative from families who are living through the nightmare of horrific crime sits on the Swiss Justice Advisory Committee. Mr. Speaker, along with everything under the sun, they blame the F&M for the criminal justice system, for matters not coming on for trial, even though they have been set down for trial. Again, I quote, they are not coming on for trial for reasons within the control of the government, such as witnesses are not turning up for trial and evidence is not available for trial. Mr. Speaker, now that they are the government, who is to blame? Are matters not coming on for trial for reasons that are not within the government's control? Mr. Speaker, whatever became of the Project Safe Bahamas? Nothing has been spoken of it since the campaign trail. Project Safe Bahamas was hailed as a tough, innovative plan to fight crime and to reduce violence. And then there was Operation Ceasefire, boasting of strike force teams, immediate law enforcement response to any violence, intense law enforcement focus on repeat offenders and most violent criminals, saturation patrols in crime hotspots, increased surveillance for accused out on bail. We now know that this is a joke because persons out on bail continue to kill or be killed. Murder trials within 12 months preventing release on bail for those accused of murder. Illegal possession of high-powered weapons and ammunition tried in the Supreme Court, resulting in tougher sentence. We must ask the question, Mr. Speaker, why is the gun court not functioning as it should? If there's enough evidence to charge, why can't trials proceed immediately when persons are arrested and charged with gun possession? They're let out on bail. Intervene directly to stop retaliatory violence with outreach workers. Street-smart individuals who can connect with those at highest risk for shooting or being shot. We know, too, that this is a joke, as the retaliation killings seem to be the order of the day. Mr. Speaker, it all sounds so good, and it looks even pretty on paper. But sadly, the truth of the matter is that our streets have turned into gut-wrenching murder scenes. Almost nightly, yellow tape is being placed to cordon off brutal, bloody murder scenes. The sad truth is that crime is crippling our country. Crime has never been a political problem. It should have never been taunted as an F&M or former Minister of National Security problem. The current Juries Bill 2014, which calls for the legislation for the inclusion of family islanders for jury duty in Nassau, was not a well thought out idea. A fact that is very evident today with these proposed amendments. Mr. Speaker, we all know that monthly bills must be paid. This government has demonstrated its inability to effectively execute the simple task by not paying power bills some time ago for months for schools on the island of Grand Bahama. And now to think that they're contemplating complicated exercise of bringing jurors from the family islands is indeed laughable. Let us review the population census by island based on the statistics on the government's website. New Providence, 70.39% of the population. Grand Bahama, 14.63% of the population. Abaco, 4.7%. Andrews, 2%. Eleuthera, 2.21%. And the Exuma and the Keys, 2.0%. Each of all the other islands has less than 1% of the total population. And so, Mr. Speaker, if you cannot find jurors in Nassau where 70% of the population resides, how can you then look to the family islands? You can't go to Grand Bahama because Grand Bahama has 2 full-time justices and its own Supreme Courts. Let's put the expense or the cost involved aside. There are still many, many challenges. Let us look at the logistics. The State Minister for Legal Affairs is quoted as saying, among the sectors contributing to the slow trying of cases are the numerous incidents of jury tampering, including attempts to intimidate jurors. What do you think, Mr. Speaker, would happen to jurors who are known to everyone in the family island community? He's further quoted as saying, sometimes trials are simply complicated by poor organization. This is the Minister of State for Legal Affairs, not Nico Grant. In one instance, we've had only 8 jurors turn out to court. All others had been served, and so this is a real problem in which the way the system operates affected. If this is happening right here on the island of New Providence, what would happen when you seek to bring persons from the family islands? It is reported that jurors on an occasion had not been fed on time, and that a judge had to use personal funds to supply lunch for jurors while they were deliberating. So, Mr. Speaker, you can have jurors logged down and you can't organize well enough to provide lunch that they're entitled to. How will you transport them to and from the family islands, to and from their hotels in an organized fashion? How will accommodations for these be organized? 70% of the population resides on the island of New Providence, yet this government wants to go to the family islands to look for jurors. Mr. Speaker, when this bill was first introduced, I was concerned about this initiative and what it will do to the Bahamian family. 8 months later, sir, 8 months later, my concerns have not been allayed. Statistics show that 60% of the country's households are headed by a single mother. 6 out of every 10 houses in this country, or 60 out of every 100, are headed by a single mother. Let us use an example, Mr. Speaker, a mother of 4 young children, teenage daughters included. She's the breadwinner of the family, taken from one of her family islands, brought to New Providence for 2 months, because that is the duration that they now are called for. What is these children supposed to do? No matter how dearly grandparents love their grandchildren, they now say, bring them when you come in to visit my house and take them when you're leaving. The Minister of Social Services continues to speak about abuse, including sexual abuse of young children. It is further noted, sir, that this abuse is committed by persons known to the victim and in too many cases committed by an actual family member. She speaks very passionate about this, sometimes so emotional, almost to the point of tears. And so I am unable to appreciate What would have been our participation during the debate on the subject? Gone are the days when a village raised a child. The single mother who represents the majority of households is responsible for all aspects of their children's lives, including the assistance in their homework, which begs the question, how did the Minister of Education feel about this? As a matter of fact, Mr. Speaker, under the headline, "Jurors irritate over adjourned cases," one juror is quoted as saying, "Every time they bring us here, we sit for a few hours or half a day, then the rest of the day is wasted for whatever reason." She continues, "I understand that we are doing a service to the country, but when you commit to jury duty, obviously you plan your day accordingly. I have kids, and so I drop them off to school and have to make arrangements for them to be collected, which can sometimes pose a problem." Mr. Speaker, can you imagine a juror deliberating on a case and she's worried about what is happening to her little children or her teenage daughter miles away in some family island? Would the accused get a fair trial? The questions are numerous, and this initiative to bring persons from the family island was simply not a well thought out one. Mr. Speaker, crime has always been a vexing problem in our beloved country. This PLP government will have you believe that the former administration was the sole cause of all criminal activities in this country. Some went as far as to lay the blame solely at the feet of the former Minister of National Security. Mr. Speaker, I've said it before, and I will continue to say or ask this question until I get an answer. Prior to May 2012, crime was a F&M government problem. Crime had the F&M crippled and unable to govern, according to side opposite. The Right Honorable Member for Central as Leader of the Opposition on the 15th of April 2011 in a national address declared that crime was the result of bad governance. The Right Honorable Member has been the Prime Minister now for 3 years. I ask him again, what is now the reason for the unacceptable level of crime in the Bahamas today? Or does he accept that crime is now a result of bad governance? What is this government's handicap? What is crippling this government that it cannot govern as it should? I vividly recall at the opening of the Mount Moriah headquarters in 2012, it was reported that the Prime Minister echoed these words: "The worst thing that this tsunami of violence sweeping over the nation was never inevitable." Because you know and I know that an important reason for the escalation of crime in the Bahamas is poor governance. The F&M has been paralyzed, unable to lead on this crucial issue. Well, Mr. Speaker, the Right Honorable Member and Prime Minister, Present Prime Minister, then goes on to say, "You can vote yourself some amazing representation because I know that Arnold Forbes will do right by you, and you can vote to retire the tragically incompetent Minister of National Security. One vote, two big achievements." Mr. Speaker, the former member for Mount Moriah and Minister of National Security has been gone for 3 years and a couple of days. Nothing has changed. Yes, the senseless murders continue. He's been replaced by the member for Bain and Grants Town. I now ask Right Honorable Member for Senegal and Prime Minister of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, is the member for Bain and Grants Town and now Minister of National Security tragically incompetent? Mr. Speaker, the murder count now stands at 40 plus, an increase of over 30% over the corresponding period of 2014, and continues to climb. We're in the 4th month of the year, and not a day goes by where major crime does not occur. Sir, no matter how many times the Commissioner of Police or the Minister of National Security tried to persuade the country that crime is down in some areas, sir, the reality is any act that is committed which contravenes the law of the Bahamas is a crime. As the Bible defines sin as sin, in this instance, all criminal acts are crimes. Daily we experience house breakings, armed robberies, stabbing, shooting, threatening acts against a person with deadly weapon, and the list of activities go on. There's power in the tongue, it is said, Mr. Speaker. we must be ever so careful what we say, especially on the campaign trail. You should not make promises that you are incapable of keeping. The member for Cat Island and Deputy Prime Minister on that same occasion at the opening of the headquarters said, they're clueless, they're lost, not living up to their obligation to protect the Bahamian people. Continuing, they have failed you miserably. He was referring to the F&M government, Mr. Speaker. This same member, now Deputy Prime Minister, has recently stated that under this government, no one is safe in the Bahamas. That has been confirmed by the fact that he himself was robbed in a home invasion. One wise man potently pointed out best when he said, put a bridle on thy tongue, set a guard before thy lips, lest the words of thine own mouth destroy thy peace. On much speaking cometh repentance, but in silence it is safety. The words of William Drummond. Mr. Speaker, where is the swift justice that was promised during the campaign and continues to be promoted by the PLP? Where is the swift justice for the 6th person that perished in a house fire over 2 years ago? Where is the swift justice for the bodies found on Anguilla Key? Mr. Speaker, on December 2nd, 2014, after a bloody night of murders, in 2 separate cases, individuals charged with murder walked out of the Supreme Court free because witnesses failed to appear. So far this year, a number of cases were apparently discontinued because witnesses didn't show up or because the prosecution's case was extremely weak, or simply because the judge did not allow the case to proceed for one valid reason or another. This is certainly unacceptable. The Minister of State for National Security accused the F&M of dismantling the Witness Protection Program. Where is the effective witness protection program now that the PLP has been the government for 3 years, sir? There's still the outstanding issue of the jailhouse wedding. The issue, as with many other issues occurring under this Progressive Liberal Party administration, where they have adopted the attitude, do nothing and the people will forget. This jailhouse wedding has been turned into a pass-the-buck contest between the Minister of National Security and the Commissioner of Police. And this has gone on in the public domain. The Commissioner of Police has declared it was wrong, unacceptable, and a disgrace to the Bahamas for a wedding to have taken place in a jailhouse cell at the Central Police Station. We await the overdue and satisfactory closure of this disgraceful matter. Well, sir, we on the side cannot and will not stand by and allow matters such as this and many others to be forgotten, especially matters that should be addressed. The Bahamian public simply asks that this government live up to its promises. This proposed Swift Justice Initiative promised to facilitate accountability, to be well positioned to proactively identify and to respond to the lack of performance or weaknesses in the system. It promised to strengthen transparency. We have yet to see it. It promised to cultivate an environment of trust and confidence in the Attorney General's office. That too will be tested very soon. Through swift justice, the government has committed to concentrate on the effective management of serious crime, especially murder, from the investigative stage. Mr. Speaker, scores of victims' families are unable to properly mourn or bring closure to the passing of their loved ones. They're unable to bring closure to tragic occurrences as they wait court dates and verdicts, and in most instances, classification of how their loved ones met their demise. There are far too many unclassified deaths, Mr. Speaker. Crime is at an all-time high in Grand Bahama. The murder count stands at 5, and we are only in the 5th month of the year. And we are already 50% of the murders we had in 2014. Now is the time to put the plans into action that the PLP bragged about. Now is the time to use that solution to crime that is crippling this country that they spoke of. And so, Mr. Speaker, I end by quoting the Attorney General. Justice must always be seen to be done. It is in our national interest to protect the integrity of our justice system. All those fallen victims that I have referred to, Mr. Speaker, deserve justice. Let us protect the integrity of our justice system. Speaker Central, thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. As many? Going twice. As many? The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Tall Pines.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I stand for and on behalf of the good people of Tall Pines, Mr. Speaker, who elected the Assembly to this Parliament to speak on their behalf, and indeed on behalf of Bahamians through the length and breadth of our country on matters that is important to their well-being. Mr. Speaker, these two bills, these amendments that is before us, the Jury's Amendment Bill and the Parliamentary Elections Bill, are intertwined with each other. The Jury's Amendment Bill, Mr. Speaker, is really there to facilitate and bring the old bill into the 21st century. The objects and reasons are clear. It says that the bill seeks to empower the Parliamentary Commissioner to gather, in addition to the names of voters, additional contact and identification information. The bill also seeks to give effect to the new innovative process of electronically selecting a jury panel by the use of a computerized system which enhances efficiency, the integrity of the jury selection process, and ensures an additional random selection of a juror. Mr. Speaker, I think all of us in this Parliament, indeed Bahamians everywhere, are aware of the fact of the difficulty in getting jurors, Mr. Speaker, or getting Bahamians to become jurors. I know one of my constituents just a few weeks ago, Mr. Speaker, called me, admonishing me, in fact begging me, to speak to someone to get their name off the jury's list. Most Bahamians are, in most cases, afraid of being involved for jury duty, even though it's our obligation, Mr. Speaker, as citizens of this country, to be selected randomly to sit on juries through the length and breadth of this Bahamas. But when it comes to murder cases, Mr. Speaker, that is highlighted in the press, Bahamians are afraid, Mr. Speaker, and wish not to be associated with the jury pool at all in our Commonwealth. And this is so, Mr. Speaker, because if you look at the history of what has taken place over the last 20 years in our Commonwealth, Mr. Speaker, with jury members being threatened, Mr. Speaker, in some cases being hurt by those persons that might have been associated with the cases, especially murder cases, people are indeed afraid to be on the jury list. Indeed, most Bahamians wonder, Mr. Speaker, why is it in a country like the Bahamas that you hardly find any jurors, Mr. Speaker, any white Bahamians in our country that sits on these juries. It's a concern for many people, Mr. Speaker, that they are almost eliminated from the judicial system when it comes to having persons serve as jurors, particularly in murder cases. And that is probably so because you can always try to bail out of being on the jury, either through sickness or you're busy at work. You simply can't spare the time that is necessary in some of these cases, which takes weeks, sometimes months, to be determined. And people simply don't want to be associated with some of what goes on in this country. Which begs the question, Mr. Speaker, if you don't have a good pool of jurors, how then is justice to be served? Because in some cases you have some behemoths, Mr. Speaker, who goes into the courts every day begging to be jurors. There's a whole group of them. If you go there, they are professional jurors. They spend all their time going around the courts trying to work deals with some of those persons who are involved in the process to ensure that they are on these juries. For whatever reason, some of them are retired, some of them are not working for whatever reason, and they prefer to be professional jurors. And of course, some of those lawyers, some of the unscrupulous one would wish to have them on the jury. And of course, if you have the same set of people on all of these cases, it presents certain problems for those who are before the courts in whatever matters that may be associated with their case. In other situations, Mr. Speaker, you have family members who are sometimes chosen randomly to be jurors who will not tell those selecting the jury that they are in fact associated with the person who is being tried. Midway through the case, someone would find out that in fact this juror is well known to the party, they are family members, and the whole case is then thrown out, and it starts over again at about a year, sometime 2 years later. This is a normal occurrence that takes place in this country. And it's a sad indictment on us as a people that you can have such unscrupulous people who may be chosen to be on a case when they know full well that they have an in-depth association or some family ties with the person who's on trial. I know what happened in the case with my son, where midway through the case, it was identified that someone associated with it was working with this person at the hotel. They were some distant family relative. Therefore, the case had to be stopped. And about a year or two later, it started again. This is a normal thing that should not be happening in a civilized society, such as the one we live in the Bahamas, Mr. Speaker. In some cases, you would hear our constituents would come to us from time to time and say that some of those lawyers and things associated with the case would try to speak to them. Because, you know, in a murder case, it only takes one person to object on that jury. So if you can get to one party on a jury, the case is null and void. It goes nowhere. And of course, you know, I believe, Mr. Speaker, that in some countries in the world, what they have done in Australia now, they have put the major murder cases before a 3-panel judge to eliminate juries. Because people are afraid to be associated. If you all would remember some time back with a guy called Lil Onks, you know, who was a terror in this country, but around the mid-'80s. Lil Onks was a real terror. And he shot and maimed some of the persons that were associated with cases that he had before the courts. And you have a lot of Lil Onks still around here today, who has been reincarnated.
Lil Onks will become a pound now.
You know, and they cause havoc in the community, and that's why Bahamians are afraid to be on the juries. I believe it's time, and I think what these amendments are doing, Mr. Speaker, is in fact trying to strengthen the system in getting the parliamentary elections apparatus in tune and in tandem with the objective of the jury's amendment bill, so that there's a wider scope of Bahamians who would be inclined to become involved in the system. Because everybody should have a fair trial. You know, you're innocent or presumed innocent until you're proven guilty by your peers. But at the same time, those persons who are associated with these cases need not to be tampered with, need not to be trampled on, need not to be molested by those persons who are associated with it. And sometimes these fellows who are on trial would get other members who they are associated with to go and approach these people to enable that they may not show up in court. I know in one case, just a few weeks ago, in fact, the policeman was afraid to show up, I understand, and didn't show up for the case. So when you have law enforcement officers, Mr. Speaker, that makes themselves unavailable in some of these murder cases, it begs the question, is the ordinary citizen safe if some of our officers are themselves afraid to go to court in some of these matters? That leaves a lot to be desired in our country. Mr. Speaker, I was taken aback last week when the House was recessed, Mr. Speaker, when we read in the newspapers and heard on the radio and television about the vicious stabbing death of this 88-year-old Canadian man in Long Island. That really bothered me as a Bahamian, Mr. Speaker. It bothered me as a human being. When you think of your father or any of our relatives at that ripe age of 88, a medical practitioner who has spent his life trying to save lives. And I asked the question, what could this good gentleman could have been in any position to protect himself against this person who is now charged with murder? 88 years old. Just think of that. My father left this world at the age of 83. He was in good health when he died from cancer. But when you think of this particular individual, Mr. Speaker, 88 years of age, a Canadian who has been residing in the Bahamas since the 1960s because of his love for our country and his devotion to assist those who needed help in the field that he practiced his craft in. To be butchered in his own home, Mr. Speaker, is more than horrendous, and it casts a black eye on our country, Mr. Speaker. It makes people feel not only ill of the Bahamas, but makes people suspect as to why they should make an investment in a country where an 88-year-old medical practitioner, Mr. Speaker, could be butchered. Mr. Speaker, even the honorable member for her constituency spoke about it, that in fact when she goes there, she leaves her doors open. I hope she doesn't make a practice of that. But you know, Mr. Speaker, it takes me back to the time when we were told a few years back that the United States government, the Canadian government, as well as the British government, had sent to our shores in excess of 1,200 hardened criminals. Persons who had gone to jail for many years for murder, for rape, for armed robbery, Mr. Speaker, that they arbitrarily or whatever methods was used to send those persons back because they said that they were from the Bahamas. In other words, someone in Florida serving 20, 30 years for murder. When he's released from prison and the officers ask him, well, what country are you from? Because you're going to be exported to your country of birth. And they said that they're from the Bahamas. They could be of Haitian origin, Jamaican, Bajan, it doesn't matter. But they claim that they are from the Bahamas, and they're placed on a plane and sent to our country. Most of them have little knowledge of the Bahamas. They probably, if they were born here, they've probably been away from us for so long that they know little or nothing of what takes place in the Bahamas today. But they are sent here on our shores, Mr. Speaker, and I understand that over 1,200 of such persons were sent to the Bahamas, I suppose, over the last 15, 20 years. I was told of one case recently where you have Bahamians who lived in Florida or the United States all of their lives, went to court on murder charges, escaped, and is here in the Bahamas today. In fact, someone just indicated that on Monday, that you have one or two Bahamians here that are wanted in the United States for murder charges in our country. Now, these people are infecting the little ordinary day-to-day Bahamian who decide that they're going to do bad And they have injected, I believe, in their heads, Mr. Speaker, this disregard for human life. Because it brings us back to this Canadian. I want to apologize, Mr. Speaker, or give my sincerest sympathy to his family. His son issued a statement in the newspapers that his father was such a great, loving human being that always tried to do good, that went into the medical profession to make a difference in the lives of ordinary people. He went throughout the length and breadth of Canada, providing his services to persons who were in need of medical attention. And he had to come to the Bahamas at the age of 88, residing here since the 60s, to be butchered by one of ours. It begs the question, Mr. Speaker, if we are not interested in providing the necessary curtailment to take those persons out of society who would take a life, Mr. Speaker, so carelessly from an 88-year-old man. I mean, how is it possible? How could he have been in a position to defend himself? The fragility that he would have had in his age, Mr. Speaker, when he is here trying to live out his last days in the blissful community of Long Island. I ask the question, if we're not going to implement the laws of our country, then it's incumbent upon each and every member of this parliament to bring back the dead then. Because the Bible even says if you were to take a life, you must appreciate that your life will be taken. In the United States of America, Mr. Speaker, criminals who committed murder, heinous murder, and take a life, Mr. Speaker, have their life taken on a regular basis. Here in the Bahamas, even with the butchering of that good gentleman from Canada, Mr. Speaker, what is going to be done? What is going to be done? He is going to be charged before the courts, as he has already been charged, up in Fox Hill Prison. You'll get one of the lawyers who hangs around these courts on a daily basis like piranhas, really. You go to, I came here this morning by the courts, and they're like buzzards waiting for that carcass to fall. You know, waiting to pick the meat off the bones, with no regard for the person who was butchered, you know. No regard at all for that man who came here, Mr. Speaker, among us as a guest in our country, and who today lies in a grave, hopefully in his beautiful country of Canada, Mr. Speaker. We must ask the question, Mr. Speaker, as members who were sent to this parliament to work for and on behalf of the Bahamian people and all of those who live among us, what is our obligation? Are we prepared to continue to go on, Mr. Speaker, to see young men, young women, and old men and old women, Mr. Speaker, have their life taken by those who should really not be living among a civilized people, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, you know, I don't understand why, as an independent country, since July 10th, 1973, that we call ourselves free and independent, but yet we continue to rely on 10 or 12 old men in London who decides the fate of our country, Mr. Speaker. We are in a serious crisis in our country, Mr. Speaker. Every day you open the newspapers or read the newspapers, some innocent life is being taken. And the tragedy is, Mr. Speaker, generations of Bahamians, Mr. Speaker, are feeling those pains for the rest of their lives. And some will come and say that the state has no authority to take a life. Well, who gave him that authority to take the life of that 88-year-old man? Who gave him that authority? The state has an obligation, Mr. Speaker, in my opinion, to do what is necessary to combat this evil that is among us, Mr. Speaker. This cancer that is taking out the guts of the Bahamian people, Mr. Speaker. Something must be done. We were elected by the people to look out for their needs. We were elected to look out for their future, for their children's future, Mr. Speaker. And I believe, Mr. Speaker, that all of us, when you see those polls close at 6 p.m., can have a rude awakening if we refuse to act on behalf of those persons who gave us the privilege, Mr. Speaker, of coming into these parliament on their behalf.
I with you, tall pines.
On their behalf, Mr. Speaker.
I with you.
Capital punishment must be fully implemented in our country, Mr. Speaker. We cannot, and we should not, Mr. Speaker, accept any further excuses. Any further excuses. I don't care about no privy council. They don't dictate my life.
None.
I'm a Bahamian.
Amen.
And if you're butchering our people, if you're killing people in this country unabated, Mr. Speaker, and you know that your life is not going to be taken, they're never going to stop.
The public supports you, my brother.
They are never going to stop, Mr. Speaker. I know how some of the lawyers feel. And I appreciate that. That's their feeling, Mr. Speaker. But I'm speaking for the ordinary Bahamian who say enough is enough. Give us a break. Stop the mothers in this country, Mr. Speaker, from crying day in and day out. Stop the nieces and nephews from missing their loved ones, Mr. Speaker. We must bring an end to this carnage that goes on unabated. No one feels the pain than those, Mr. Speaker, who have experienced the death of a loved one. The young gentleman, Sean, who was gunned down a few weeks ago, Mr. Speaker, lived on my blocks, was a good friend of my son, Mario. No, the only thing his father told me, and his precious mother, said, well, Leslie, you know, we feel good in one sense, that he is there with his good friend, Mario. I mean, here's a parent that has lost a son that was shot down some 5 or 6 times, less than 200 feet from his house. And all the parent can say to me is that at least he is there with his friend. But they would wish for their son to be here with them. Only God has the right to take a life. God gave us life. Man has no right to take a life and be set free and brag in this country. You see them in the newspapers with these funny laugh on the face, Mr. Speaker, as if nobody cares. You can't do anything to me. I'll kill you when I get out. And we accept it. We allow what's happening in this country to happen, Mr. Speaker. It is our fault. The United States Supreme Court is just that, the Supreme Court. You can't go into the United States of America and say that because the Europeans or what other organization throughout this world say the death penalty is inhumane and you won't have it. That can't happen. And it shouldn't happen in no independent, free country that calls themselves a sovereign state when others overseas, thousands of miles away from our shores, can have the last say in our affairs. Mr. Speaker, it is time for that to stop. Amen. I beg all this, Mr. Speaker, who can make a difference, to stand up and make that difference, Mr. Speaker. Make our country a better country. Stop the tears from flowing from the eyes of these families, Mr. Speaker. It is wrong. It is wrong, Mr. Speaker, that these killers, Mr. Speaker, without a conscience, they have no regard for human life, can walk through the land and bread of this country, Mr. Speaker, can do as they please. Fellas out on bail for 3 murders. How could we call ourselves a civilized country? How could we come in here saying that I want your vote, I want your support, I'm going to look out for your interests, and come in here and do nothing about it? How could we do it? But we do it every day. Some of the trivial things that takes place in this parliament, Mr. Speaker. You know, I said that I was here from 87, Mr. Speaker. 3 times they send me, and 3 times they send me home. I'm back again. And they may send me home again. I know for coming back after that. But, Mr. Speaker, you know, someone decide to take a life, there have to be repercussions. Jail cannot be the answer, because no one is going to bring that person back, Mr. Speaker. Only God is going to do that on his appointed time when he comes back for all of us. And we sit back and we do nothing. One excuse after the next. Those of us in here who don't believe in capital punishment, fine. I have no problem, that's your view. But your view shouldn't supersede the law of our land.
Amen.
Your view shouldn't continue to have a country where people are afraid to go out at night. You know how much parents, Mr. Speaker, are on edge when their young children go to a nightclub on the weekend? Yes. When you see 12 o'clock come and you don't hear from your grandson, you get in your car and you go looking for them. Because they realize that the fellas will take your life for nothing. And why they do it? Because they know the repercussions, Mr. Speaker, is zero. They don't have a future, but they want to take your children's future. And what do we do? Nothing. And the excuse is, some court in London has decided what is the voice of the voice. I could care less what they think about what is the voice. They don't run my life. They run no Bahamian life. What they want to do in England is their business. I don't care what they do. Nothing to do with me. But I care what happened in my country. This is what God gave me. He didn't give me England. He gave me the Bahamas. So why should we as a people continue to let these people? Why do we continue? Mr. Speaker, when does it end? When does it end? When? How many other Bahamians are going to go to their grave before God decides to take them? How many more? How many more, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, since 29, there were some 50 plus Bahamians that were executed. None of them came back and killed nobody. We don't have to worry about them, hey? They're gone. You take a life, we take yours. What's the problem? What is the problem? You have the right to take my son or my daughter from you, from me. And I got no reason. Why do you think people are being killed? Why do you think the guys are now afraid to go out on bail? Because the families can kill them. The friends is going to take their life. We're just human beings, Mr. Speaker. We have feelings. I go home every night without my son. You know what is going through my head every night? Yes. Those people I'd like to kill?
Careful, honorable member.
I got to be, Mr. Speaker, I'm telling you. This is real life. We are only human beings. But you cannot continue as a country, we cannot, to allow these people to do as they please, Mr. Speaker, with no repercussion. It must come to an end. If not, we shouldn't be in here. Give somebody else an opportunity who will do the right thing, who will stand up and say enough is enough. Mr. Speaker, I'm sick and tired of reading in the newspapers every day. I'm tired of talking to parents, Mr. Speaker, from my own experience. I'm tired of telling them to read Job and to read Psalms. I said, that's where your solace is going to come from. Turn to God. But God didn't take these people. Man took them. And we have an obligation to our constituents, to our country, to protect them and to enhance their welfare. And we haven't been doing so. We haven't done it. We refuse to commit ourselves to justice, Mr. Speaker. Okay? Mr. Speaker, in Ecclesiastes 8, verse 11, it says, because sentence against an evil work is not executed speedily, Therefore, the heart of the sons of men is fully set in them to do evil.
Amen. When justice is slow in coming.
You do nothing? What happens? You see wrong and you don't try to right it.
Amen, brother.
Wrong will continue. You turn a blind eye to these evil deeds.
It's fully set to do.
And they go unabated, Mr. Speaker. It has to stop, Mr. Speaker. When are we going to take our country back, Mr. Speaker? When are we going to take our country back, Mr. Speaker? We are losing a country, Mr. Speaker. We are losing a country. Mr. Speaker? Speaking of, I read once a quote that says, a great civilization is not conquered from without, and it destroys itself from within. In the Bahamas, Mr. Speaker, we are being destroyed by evil men. And we sit down and we do nothing about it, Mr. Speaker. Cannot be right. It is time all of us in Mr. Speaker live up to the ideals that those persons charged us with when those polls were closed at 6 p.m. And they said, I put my trust in you to look out for the affairs of my children and my country. Give me a better future. Assist me in making a contribution to my family and by extension to my country. That's all they're asking for, you know. The average maybe don't ask for much. They want the freedom to know, Mr. Speaker, that they can go any place in this country, that they can send their children anywhere in this country, Mr. Speaker, and not be frightened the entire night when their daughter or sons are out, Mr. Speaker. I remember a situation back in '87 when I first came to this parliament, Mr. Speaker. Beautiful young lady in Garden Hills, when I represented Blue Hills, that extended from Gladstone Road to East Street. A Defense Force officer, Mr. Speaker, at the sports center. She had just decided to do away with him. Killed her and pushed a bottle in her. Served about 15 years in prison, is now a free man. Where is she? In a grave. You know how her parents feel? Her mother, her father, her sisters and brothers, her nieces and nephews? They destroy generations and we let them walk away free. Because good men and women refuse to do what is right, Mr. Speaker. It is not fair. It is not fair, Mr. Speaker. And I'm telling you, Mr. Speaker, in this next election, I think the people of this country are going to be very harsh with some of us. They're going to say, you had an opportunity to do good. You had an opportunity to make those tough decisions, to make a difference in our lives. And you refuse to do so. Why should I allow you to represent me again when you did nothing and you could have done something, Mr. Speaker? I say, Mr. Speaker, on behalf of all those grieving parents, all of those sisters and brothers, those nieces and nephews, and those Bahamians yet unborn, Mr. Speaker, please, for God's sake, for our country's sake, let us do the right thing, Mr. Speaker. Amen. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Honourable Member. As many, Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Golden Isles.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, I rise to make a brief contribution to the Jury's Amendment Bill and the Parliamentary Elections Bill that is before us. And I do so following a very impassioned and obviously genuine and heartfelt contribution from the Honourable Member from Tall Pines, who has expressed a lot of the frustrations being experienced by many in our country today. Mr. Speaker, I rise on behalf of the people of the Golden Isles constituency, who I am privileged to represent in this House at this time. And I would just like to report to them on the progress of some of our initiatives in the constituency. The repairs to the boat ramp have been completed in Adelaide Village.
You'll be briefed, the Honourable Member.
I'm sorry?
You'll be brief?
Very brief, sir. Very, as is my custom. And so that is in use now, the ramp for the fishermen in the area. The work on the clinic for Adelaide Village is set to commence very soon, and the same for the water infrastructure in Coral Lakes and in Boatswain Hill. I, too, very briefly, Mr. Speaker, would just like to associate myself with the comments made by other members in congratulating Trinity Methodist Church. The representatives have since left on their 150th anniversary, and as well to extend congratulations to the softball and the swim teams that were here present earlier today. Mr. Speaker, these two amendments, the amendments to the Juries Bill and the amendments to the Parliamentary Elections Bill, are related, and in short, they enable the parliamentary registrar to collect information inclusive of the phone number, the email address, fax number, and NIB number of persons being registered to vote. And it additionally empowers the registrar, the parliamentary commissioner, to share that information with the registrar of the Supreme Court pursuant to directives of the Chief Justice. The amendments, Mr. Speaker, indicate that this information shall only be used for the purpose of assisting the registrar of the Supreme Court in carrying out his functions under the Juries Act. In addition, Mr. Speaker, the Juries Amendment empowers the Commissioner to use electronic means to impanel a jury. So whilst I imagine we might still have the use of numbered balls being placed in a box and drawn, this also enables the use of computers to use electronic methods to impanel a jury. Those are the amendments that is what these amendments do, Mr. Speaker. I thought it was useful to mention that because one of the previous speakers from the party opposite waxed eloquent about a separate amendment that we had passed last year. And I just wanted members of the public to know that what is before us today is to enable the parliamentary commissioner to collect information, phone number, email, fax number, NIB number, and to share that information with the registrar of the Supreme Court to enable that registrar to use that information to assist in impaneling a jury. Mr. Speaker, these amendments today are linked, and they link two critical functions, in my opinion, of citizens, of responsible, active, engaged citizens. That first responsibility is the responsibility to register and to vote in order to elect the government to administer their affairs, and it involves their responsibility to assist in the administration of justice through jury service. And these are two very, very important and fundamental functions, Mr. Speaker. Through voting, of course, our public officials are elected, and through voting, the public, as we are so often reminded, and of course we accept, can pass judgment on those elected officials through the process of periodic elections, Mr. Speaker, so that when we come to elections, the public will tell us by their actions whether they agree with what we have done and on the adequacy of the level of our service. By voting, Mr. Speaker, citizens get to participate in having the country move in the direction that they would like to see it. They help by their votes, Mr. Speaker, to formulate our national priorities by voting for the parties or the individuals that best reflect their values and where they want to see the country grow. Through jury service, Mr. Speaker, citizens ensure the proper functioning of our judicial systems through our process of jury trials. And we have heard about the difficulties experienced by the system because of the lack of jurors or the unwillingness of citizens to participate in jury trials, Mr. Speaker. And I must say, Mr. Speaker, that we can do a couple of things. We can stand in here and use the fact that it is difficult for jurors to be impaneled in some cases and use that to indicate some failure of the present administration, or we can do that what this administration has done in seeking to widen the pool, hence the amendments last year to allow for jurors to be impaneled from the family islands, and we can do what we're doing here today, i.e. allowing the parliamentary commissioner to collect additional information to make it easier to contact individuals and share that information with the Supreme Court to make it easier to impanel a jury, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, through jury service as well, our citizens ensure that by the whole concept of judgment by a jury of one, or trial of a jury of one's peers, national norms and the national sentiment as it relates to the whole concept of justice and crime and punishment are reflected in the outcomes from our court system. Juries have the power to acquit. They set the whole concept of a fair trial, Mr. Speaker, and so they put the onus on the prosecution to ensure that when they do come to court, the evidence, because, Mr. Speaker, the punishments are potentially so severe, they ensure that the cases are of sufficient strength to ensure a conviction. And again, that puts the onus on those who administer justice, Mr. Speaker. And again, we can come in here and talk about who is acquitted and who walks away because of lack of evidence, but, Mr. Speaker, it is proper for the standard to be very, very high when we're talking about depriving people of their freedom. And through jury service, Mr. Speaker, when all citizens become involved through their decisions, they help us to formulate our views and our norms as to what is fair and what is not fair, Mr. Speaker. It is very important, these are short amendments that we're dealing with today, Mr. Speaker, but it is very important that all of our citizens participate and not back off from their civic responsibilities. Nobody is going to do it for us, Mr. Speaker. We have to do it for ourselves. And so I encourage all citizens to embrace these national civic responsibilities, Mr. Speaker. Listening to the contribution so far today, Mr. Speaker, we get two perspectives. We get the perspective of someone speaking from the party opposite, who, as is their norm, offers no solutions or no constructive suggestions, but just seek to criticize and sling mud, Mr. Speaker, in my opinion. And we get another viewpoint, Mr. Speaker, that of the honorable member for Tall Pines, who, again, in his impassioned delivery, reflected a lot of what you would hear on the streets, or what you would hear from what we call the proverbial common man, those people who have been victims of crime, etc., who are crying out for a solution, Mr. Speaker. And crime, and particularly violent crime, is, without doubt, a very, very vexing issue, and an issue that occupies the mind of the Bahamian people. No one can say that the level is acceptable, Mr. Speaker. It is totally unacceptable to all of us, Mr. Speaker. But the level, I believe, is a reflection of the development or lack of development, or the changes in the attitudes and the norms of what is considered normal behavior among some quarters, Mr. Speaker. And it has taken time. We all can reflect on times when the levels were lower, and now we see, so far this year, 40-odd homicides. Totally unacceptable, Mr. Speaker. There was a time not so long ago when that would have been the national count. But it has taken us some time, and there have been many factors that have gotten us to this point, Mr. Speaker. And it will take us some time to fix these issues. The important thing is, Mr. Speaker, is that you develop a plan and that you seek to execute your plan to attack this problem. We have this question, this age-old question, whether crime is a political issue or is it not, Mr. Speaker. I take the view that inasmuch as the government of the day, the administration of the day, is responsible for the administration of the laws, is responsible for the allocation of the resources to engage in this fight, then to that extent it is a political issue, Mr. Speaker, because as lawmakers, and in particular as government, we are responsible for taking the lead in setting the example and in putting in place initiatives to attack this problem. And it is the easiest thing in the world, Mr. Speaker, and to shoot down and look back and whatever else. But we have to put in place a strategy and put in place the resources to combat this crisis of crime. And I believe, Mr. Speaker, that we have been doing so as an administration, and I will tell you why, Mr. Speaker. Very early in the term of this administration, we restored the security of tenure of the Commissioner of Police to ensure that he or she could perform his or her functions without fear or favor. No more 5-year contract with an option of the government to renew. Mr. Speaker, we thought that was against any sort of form of fairness. It cast a shadow over the office, and it reduced, in our opinion, the faith of the public in the ability, when you have someone who is subject to a contract and renewal, the ability of that person to act without fear or favor. So we restored the security of tenure, Mr. Speaker. Very, very important point. And so when people start to talk and throw accusations around, as some want to do about who is interfering and this and that and all the other things, Mr. Speaker, one of the first acts of this administration was to restore the security of tenure of the Commissioner of Police to ensure that whoever holds that office can do so without fear or without having to sing for any kind of supper, looking for a contract renewal at the end of whatever term it is, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have provided resources to the Royal Bahamas Police Force in terms of men and women and material resources, funds, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that they are adequately equipped to carry out their functions, Mr. Speaker. Equally, we have, or perhaps even more so, we have provided resources to the Royal Bahamas Defense Force in terms of the recruitment of men and women to serve, in terms of unprecedented investment in equipment, in boats, $230-odd million to purchase vessels and to modernize the Coral Harbor base and bases in other parts of the island, Mr. Speaker. Investing resources in the Royal Bahamas Defense Force. We are modernizing the Customs Department, Mr. Speaker. Last Friday, I had the opportunity to speak at the graduation of the first 15, or in this dispensation, 15 Customs Marine officers, Mr. Speaker, to assist us in patrolling the marinas, the private marinas, the canals, the harbors, etc., to prevent the smuggling in of guns and ammunition and drugs, etc., Mr. Speaker. We are going to be developing a K-9 unit for the Bahamas Customs Department. So we are investing, putting the Bahamian people's money to work in modernizing the Customs Department to improve our enforcement, Mr. Speaker, investing in training, Mr. Speaker. We have invested in improved conditions at our Simpson Penn and William A. Pratt Center for young men and young women, respectively, Mr. Speaker, to give them a better environment so that they're not seen as being discarded at a young age, but improving the environment of those young persons who have perhaps strayed from the straight and narrow, to give them another chance, Mr. Speaker. We've invested in improved conditions, Mr. Speaker. We've invested billions of dollars in an upgrade of the detention center, Mr. Speaker. We've provided millions of dollars in terms of repatriation to protect the integrity of our borders and deal with the problem of illegal immigration, Mr. Speaker. We've invested in new courts to improve the administration of justice, to speed up trials so we don't have cases being adjourned to 3 years from today, and so that bail is almost automatic, Mr. Speaker. We've invested in the courts so that we can have more trials done, so that trials are not put off for years, and so that this issue of unreasonable delay does not arise, Mr. Speaker. We have amended the Bail Act to make it more difficult for violent offenders to get bail. We have facilitated the appointment of additional justices for the courts that have been constructed, Mr. Speaker. We have invested in prevention programs. Yes, we have invested in Urban Renewal 2.0. We have invested in the Urban Renewal Small Home Repair Program, Mr. Speaker, where hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of homes have been repaired to the satisfaction of the owners, Mr. Speaker. We have invested in the Bahamas Technical and Vocational Institute by providing more scholarships so our young people can go to BTVI free of charge and learn a trade, and so they don't fall into a life of crime, Mr. Speaker. We've invested in more scholarships at the College of the Bahamas, more scholarships so our students can study overseas. More funds have been allocated for summer employment, Mr. Speaker, to keep our young people occupied during the summer. More funds invested in social services, Mr. Speaker, to take care of the needs of those who have fallen through the cracks, Mr. Speaker. More money invested in social services so that those who have fallen through the cracks and find themselves in need do not feel that they are abandoned and forgotten by society, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have invested in job training through the development of the National Training Agency.
Members, this member on the floor.
Mr. Speaker, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have invested in job training through the establishment and providing the resources to the National Training Agency, Mr. Speaker, to provide skills to our young people. Again, to impart skills to them so that they can become employed, they can support themselves, and perhaps assist in supporting their families, and hence not turn to a life of crime, Mr. Speaker. All of these things are related, Mr. Speaker. So when someone can get up and say that the philosophy of this government is do nothing and perhaps people will forget, Mr. Speaker, they're not being totally forthright, Mr. Speaker. This government has, from day one, from the very beginning, taken decisive action to address this problem of crime, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, any plan to address the crime problem has to recognize that you have to have a plan that runs the gamut from enforcement and punishment straight to prevention, or the other way around, from prevention straight up to punishment and enforcement. And as I have demonstrated, I believe, Mr. Speaker, and others who speak can expand on it, the government is making tremendous efforts in this area. But what we all recognize, Mr. Speaker, is that there needs to be a change in attitude, particularly attitudes towards conflict resolution and expression. And as much as all of us would like to be able to wake up one morning and flip a switch and the problem is solved, or pull a lever and the problem is solved, Mr. Speaker, we have to recognize that there's no quick fix, Mr. Speaker. What we have to do is focus on being able to punish those hardcore criminals that are wreaking havoc on our society, and we do that by resourcing our law enforcement agencies, by resourcing our courts, Mr. Speaker, and we have to provide positive alternatives for our young people, and we do that by investing in alternatives like the urban renewal, like training, like providing scholarships to BTVI, like improving conditions at our centers for young people, Mr. Speaker. And so, to say that this government has abdicated its responsibility or is doing nothing, Mr. Speaker, is totally, totally false. The evidence does not support this at all. In fact, it supports the exact opposite, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, so I just want to say that, and to reaffirm, that with these bills, again, what we are doing is seeking to empower our officials, give them more resources, more tools to do their jobs. In this case, making more information available to our registrar of the Supreme Court so that they can impanel jurors who will sit on the cases. We can invest in the courts, we can invest in police officers, we can do all of these things, but if at one of those links in that chain, if we've done all of that and we cannot impanel jurors, then the whole thing is for naught, Mr. Speaker. And so we have to be able to come here and do these things that will incrementally equip our public officials to do the jobs that they are set to do, Mr. Speaker. And by bringing these two bills together, I think symbolically, Mr. Speaker, the Parliamentary Elections Bill and the Jury Amendment Bill, it affirms, at least in my mind, Mr. Speaker, it caused me to reflect back on our roles as citizens of our country and our joint responsibility, all of us, individually, by our actions, by doing our civic duty to not, of course, at the end of the day, the buck stops over here because the administration of the government is responsible, but it reaffirms our several responsibility as citizens, Mr. Speaker, to each of us do every day all that is necessary to create the society, the kind of society in which we want to live. Mr. Speaker, I support the amendments to the two bills.
Thank you. Thank you, Honourable Member. As many? Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for North Eleuthero.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The member yields. The chair recognizes the member for Payne and Grantstown.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to suspend. I move that the House be suspended until 3 p.m. this afternoon.
Second.
It is moved and seconded that the business of this House suspends until 3 p.m. this afternoon. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. The business of this House suspends until 3 p.m. this afternoon.
All right.
For Finance, the Honorable Michael Halkitis. And part of his address, even though he supports the two bills, of course, part of his address referred to the previous speaker, the member for Tall Pines, Leslie Miller, who made a really impassionate call for the full implementation of capital punishment. He raised the issue about the 88-year-old Canadian retired doctor who was killed in Long Island recently, and says that, you know, we really need to forget the Privy Council and go ahead and start introducing capital punishment again, since it's on the books, a call that he has made repeatedly over the years. We also heard from Nico Grant, the member for Central Grand Bahama today, and prior to him, the Fox Hill MP, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Immigration, Fred Mitchell, who said that the tapings of Bahamians by U.S. officials, he advised that the U.S. will now use the lawful authority for surveillance that has been agreed to by both the Bahamas and the United States for surveillance on drugs and illegal activity. He also laid down the statements by Prime Minister, the Right Honorable Perry Christie, that were issued at CARICOM U.S. Summit in Jamaica and the Summit of Americas. He described both of those meetings as being very successful and the Bahamas being able to achieve what they wanted from them. Now, he also, that is the Foreign Affairs Minister Fred Mitchell, said that Consul General to Atlanta, Randy Roll, who was involved in a situation at Bimini over the Easter holiday weekend, is back in the Bahamas, and is having consultations at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and that those consultations are continuing. The speaker, though, at the beginning, before the whole proceeding started, said that he had approved the request made by the Public Accounts Committee, which is chaired by the St. Anne's MP, Hubert Chipman, to have public hearings regarding BAMPSI. So we will see what happens with that as it goes on. But the speaker said that he has approved for that to happen, for those public hearings to happen in principle. Now, Janaea Noel Ferguson is at the House of Assembly. Let's see, she's not quite ready yet. Okay, well, we know that she will be coming to give us a real and full reporting of what went down in the House of Assembly this morning. As I said, we've had 4 or 5 speakers. The Prime Minister also made a very small intervention today regarding the people of the Methodist Church that were actually seated in the gallery. Also in the gallery, members of the 2 times victorious Carifta swim team. And all of the participants that were there were made mention of and given a round of applause by parliamentarians. But it's the Jury's Amendment Bill for 2015 and the Parliamentary Elections Bills for 2015 that are designed to make jury selection, the whole process, a lot more efficient and to give more integrity. Now I understand that Janea Noel Ferguson is standing by, so let's take it to the House of Assembly and Janea.
Thanks, Julian. I'm live here outside of the House of Assembly where debate is continuing on the Jury's Amendment Bill 2015 that's coupled with the Parliamentary Elections Bill 2015. Now, these bills intended to expand the jury pool by allowing the voter registration to be expanded, like I said, to Family Islands and the like. Now, I'm joined with the MP for Central Grand Bahama, Nico Grant, who had some concerns about the establishment of this bill. Mr. Grant, can you share those with us?
Yes, if you would note from my contribution, I again expressed my concern about the Jury's Amendment Bill 2014, which made provisions for the inclusion of jurors from the Family Islands, which makes no sense to me. We have 70% of our population residing in New Providence, and we're going to turn to the Family Islands for jurors. I also question the government's coordinator as it relates to swift justice, in that we just passed the bill 2014 in July, and here it is 8 months later, we're debating another amendment to the jurors bill. They said it's a part of their swift justice initiative, but in actuality, swift justice does not exist, you know? And one of the things that concerns me is the fact that over 2 years ago, some 6 persons lost their lives in a house fire in the Angleston area. We have yet to find out how and why those people lost their lives. So where's the swift justice for their families?
Speaking about crime, we heard from the Tall Pines MP who's really renewing a call for capital punishment. Is this something that you would be supporting given the situation right now?
I think the laws of a land should be enforced. And if the reintroduction, if you will, of capital punishment would serve as a deterrent, then I'm for it.
Okay, thank you so much. That was MP for East Grand Bahama, Nico Grant, stating his concerns with the present legislation being debated. Now, also contributing to those bills today was the MP for Tall Pines, Leslie Miller, who really gave an impassioned contribution on those bills, speaking about his son that tragically passed a few years ago and renewing a call for capital punishment in the country. He also spoke about the need to do away with the Privy Council. Thanks for joining us, Mr. Miller. Yeah. Tell us, why is this bill so important to you at this juncture, especially when we deal with crime? And you also admonish your colleagues that if something isn't done with crime, this could be the end when election time comes.
Listen, I believe that as the people's representative, we have an obligation. In fact, we have a solemn obligation to work for and on their behalf. The carnage that is going on our streets, when you can kill an 88-year-old innocent man from Canada, when you can butcher him, and you know that the end result is you're going to jail for about 20 years and the man is in the grave. What are we going to do as a people? I mean, we acting like savages, that everything they do is acceptable to us. We have laws on the book. The Prime Minister says he's all for capital punishment. Do something about it. Implement our laws. Why should you allow 12 men in London to decide the future of our country? They don't face the carnage we face. They don't face the murders we face. They don't face the brutality baby people face. They have no right to dictate us as a people. They don't have that right. That's the right that God gave us as Bahamians, that you decide your own course, that the future is decided by Bahamians and not foreigners. That is my view, and I think that's the view of most Bahamians.
Do you think now that, you know, everyone says that history repeats itself and we go through these crime phases and that we may not want to be as reactionary to that? What do you say to that?
Madam, please. In the United States of America, our great neighbor to the north, who we like to emulate in everything we do, right? They execute people every day. What's the problem with us? We just don't have the guts. We don't have the fortitude to do the right thing on behalf of the people. That's what it's boiled down to. You don't have the guts to do it.
And how far are you willing to take this now? You've gave a very forceful speech in the House. Where do you want to see this end up? Or do you think it will be taken seriously this time?
I've been saying this all my life. We have an obligation as the people. I take my position in Parliament seriously. The people in Tall Pines voted for me to speak on their behalf. I believe I speak on behalf of very, very many Bahamians who feel the same way I feel. You must protect and enhance the welfare of your people. The butchering must stop. The killings must cease, and the only way to do it, you take a life, yours will be taken. The Bible says it. We say we are a Christian nation. Well, implement the laws of the Bible with the laws of the land, and we won't have a problem. But we don't have the guts to do it. That's what it takes, fortitude and guts. And that's what we lack in this country today.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Member for Tall Pines, Leslie Miller. Of course, debate continues on the Parliamentary Elections Act and Juries Amendment Election Bill at 3 p.m. when the House of Assembly resumes. We, of course, hope that you will join us at that hour. Thanks so much, and back to you in the studio, Julian.
Okay, thank you, Janaea. And like you said, we will be back at 3, and Keishla Adderley will pick it up from there. Tune in.